Well, it says I'm live. Looky, looky, looky. Sarge is here early in the day. We got 5 people waiting, and let's get a few people up on screen. We can say hello to a few of the guests, and yeah, I'm a big fan. Oh, hang on. I'm gonna have feedback here. Hold on. Oh, going crazy. Pow! I fixed it. All right. Yeah. So Brett Turvey sings my song. I guess maybe that should have been what I titled it, because it just dawned on me. But I get into it to people that think, and Brett Turvey was just interviewed by Donna Rotuno, Crime and Justice with Donna Rotuno. But okay interview. I'm not. I have, I think it was okay. I would have done something completely different, but very good interview in the sense of the little bits that we did get from Turvey are pretty extraordinary, and they're the all that matters. Hey there, what's up there, Moon baby? Moonlit baby? I don't know what the hell that means. Yeah, Moonlit baby. What up? Yeah, it's Turvey should be the blueprint for streamers. I don't know how it works if you play other people's content. I know it's for educational purposes and it's to, blah, 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 but I don't want to get struck. I don't want to be reported for infringement because she's connected to Fox News and other places. So, and unless somebody in the chat room can tell me, I don't know how it works. I'm playing someone else's stream across my stream, right? So, I'm reluctant to do that. But one thing I would like people to do. Here's what I would like people to do. What's up, Tom Boy? What up there, Christy Chaos? I would like people to play the first few fucking minutes of what Turvey says in the very beginning of this presentation, okay? I can't stress to you enough that what he's presenting and the very first few things that he says describe exactly the point I try to make. When I'm telling people I refuse to get into the theorization of who did it, that I refuse to participate in trying to say who committed the crime or find the guilty parties. I just won't do that. It's not pertinent to the case. It literally is not even important at all. And it's almost, as he describes it, it's almost an insult to the victims and even maybe to the true crime community that he didn't say that. So are you sure that's how it works, Tomboy? Because look, I'd like to share this across my stream, but not because I'm trying to build a stream. Like I get no revenue from this, and I don't make any money on this. I don't let ads come through to get paid, and I don't ask for your money because I don't want it. And I just sometimes I like to have a little chat. Yeah, see, Tomboy Charmed, you setting me up. I have to give you a crack in the back of the head, Tom. Where are you? Anyway. Yeah, so I don't know how it works, and I would love to go through this, even if it took me it's not a very long stream. It's a 45-minute stream. I don't care if it took me all day. I got to play in 30-second segments or something. I don't know. As long as you stop in and react to it. Oh, are you sure to Christy Chaos? All right, the hell with it. I'm gonna try and do that. Because I do really want to chime in and react to it because, let me see if that's it. Share. Let's see if it comes up for you guys. Oh, don't worry, I'm going to react to it. Oh boy, am I going to react to it. Let's see. Put this on live. There it is. Let me click live on my YouTube space. Hit live, stupid thing. Why won't there it is? All right, so I backed this up, and I'm going to play this, and we're going to have a little discussion about this. Let me back this up just a little bit. All right.
Mainly because, well, there's a number of ways that I reacted to it, but my first initial reaction as a person, as somebody who works in the justice system and observes it, was relief. I was relieved, mainly because of the way of what he said in his filing. It was there's some important facts and details came out that really haven't been covered at all. I mean, I want to take a moment to talk to you like a person, like you're a human being. I'm a human, you're a human. We both have human emotions and have human responses to these things. And it's been, the word I would use is disgusting. It's been disgusting the way that most of the topics around this case have been talked about and shared and even ruminated and theorized over. And I'm grateful to be in this space with you because I know you're not like that. You're more of a facts and law, and that's how I prefer to meet this case. Because
now I want to comment about that. He says it. I think he says it more effectively than I do, and that's why I wanted to play that little piece. Okay, is that when I view this or I view anything, I don't view it with a particular opinion one way or the other, whether I have that opinion or not. Even when I cover politics in here, and for those of you that say, don't talk politics, this is true crime, get the fuck out of my channel. Just get out. I don't even want you in here. Your opinion about don't talk politics is an insult to humanity. Get out. However, in this particular instance where you're listening to what Turvey is saying, I can't agree with him more. I don't know who solved this case. Nobody knows who solved this case. And all of these people putting together all of these dots to tell you who did it and who didn't do it and what is almost literally an insult to the victims. I agree with him on that. That's why you don't see me on here all the time. That's why after Brian Koberger took a plea deal, I walked away for 8, 10, 12 months, whatever it was. And the reason being that the information, the facts make to me the only thing to be interested in. Right? I don't find it fun or even entertaining to theorize. That look, there's a lot of streamers out here that they're very good at entertaining you. And if this is what you consider entertainment, I'm not going to stand in judgment of that. You're free to be entertained in any way, shape, or form, but I am not going to be the guy to entertain you. In as much as I'm not going to lay out who I think did it. I got involved with that early on, and as time went on, I started asking myself, what the hell am I doing? And really, what ended up happening over time for me was that the evidence presented against this particular accused individual, Brian Christopher Koberger, never met the level of reasonable doubt. As a matter of fact, none of the evidence that I saw provided, whether it be in the probable cause affidavit or in the preceding hearings, ever even got to the level to identify Koberger. Nothing identifies him that night connected to this crime scene. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And the fact of it is that if you listen to this entire interview, and I'm going to play it and I'm going to stop and start and have comments on it, you'll see that even Turvey makes that point. And the best thing about Turvey, the best thing about him is he does not theorize to Brian's innocence. You won't even hear that discussed in any of this. And that's what makes this interview, I think, one of the best interviews of an expert. He doesn't talk about other experts specifically. He does mention he mentions some interesting stuff about how inadequate the defense team was, and he mentions names. Okay. I put the link in. I put a link in for her because I want people to listen to this and walk away with their own views. You know what I'm saying? This is really, to me, the crux of the issue has always been that there isn't a single piece of evidence that places Brian Koberger in that home unless you believe the story. And in the United States, the story isn't proof. The narrative is not proof. Okay? The evidence tells its story all by itself. And when you show me multiple white vehicles and multiple blurry images in multiple locations, none of those locations, okay, in any one of your videos or photos, not one of them uniquely identify that car as belonging to Brian Koberger. But your narrative tells me that's what it is. That's not evidence of anything. And that's what matters here. Not whether Brian did the crime or not. It's what is our government representatives presenting? What are they doing? Why are they spending $8 million on a case that they can't even in their own own words that they can't even prove this guy is involved. That's essentially, in a nutshell, what was said by the prosecutor when the change of plea came through. Okay? Now, we have no proof this guy was involved. They didn't mention DNA. They didn't mention the sheath. They didn't. Where's the proof? And that's what as Americans, I think, is the most important thing. And yes, that is political. I don't care if you're a true crime aficionado or not, but you're an idiot if you don't understand that in fact is the political part of this case. This case is political, like it or not. All right. A lot of things in life are political. They don't have to say Trump or Biden or Pelosi. All right. That bullshit with that. But this is political. This is your government working on your behalf to bring to justice the perpetrator or perpetrators of that horrific life taking that happened in Moscow on that date, November 13, 2022, as Kathy would say. Right? And it should be beyond a reasonable doubt. And this interview is a blockbuster, in my opinion, when it comes to that particular point. So, I'm going to risk it. I'm going to play some more of this, but I am going to come in with some of my opinions that reinforce, obviously, things that I've been saying for years. So I'll shut up for a second, and I will, let me see, mute myself.
Because it's
sure,
it's more productive that way. So really great relief.
For sure.
Human response, the way of, as somebody who works in the justice system and observes it, was relief. I was relieved, mainly because of the way of what he said in his filing. It was some important facts and details came out that really haven't been covered at all. I mean, I want to take a moment to talk to you like a person, like you're a human being. I'm a human, you're a human. We both have human emotions and have human responses to these things. And it's been, the word I would use is disgusting. It's been disgusting the way that most of the topics around this case have been talked about and shared and even ruminated and theorized over. And I'm grateful to be in this space with you because I know you're not like that. You're more of a facts and law, and that's how I prefer to meet this case, because it's it's more productive that way. So really great relief.
For sure.
Primarily because so many things happen in that plea that people have only speculated about and continue to speculate about. And the first one is that no one seems to be saying out loud, which is that Ann Taylor and her legal team were fired. They were just fired across the board. There's no getting away from that, what happened there.
When you say fired, you mean that when he filed his petition, he did it on his own. So therefore, he obviously didn't ask them to do it. And then he asked for other counsel to be appointed to him. So is that what you're referring to when you say fired?
I don't know how we can see it any other way. That's the other problem we have with this
No,
case.
I agree. That's just what I'm, that's what I'm asking. I agree with that. I just want to be clear so people understand. Yeah,
exactly. For those of us who work these kinds of cases, I mean, I do investigative cases for law enforcement. I do cases for prosecutors, and I also do.
Now that's the most Trumpian thing that Koberger did. You're fired. You guys remember The Apprentice? You're fired.
Do cases for defense attorneys and civil attorneys. And then I also do post-conviction cases, quite a few of them, to review things done after the conviction has already occurred. And I think it's just interesting how people are tripping over themselves to try to describe this in another way, to try to give some leeway to what's happening or create some sort of intrigue or mystery about it. Koberger laid it out pretty clearly what the issues were. And that's so my sense is relief that he is actually able to speak for himself, as opposed to being suppressed by Ann Taylor. Ann Taylor no longer holds the privilege. The privilege is his, and he gets to decide what he wants to say. And that has not been true since the plea. And that's the other thing. It goes, if you want, we can go right into what the plea is and what he claims if you want. But so my first reaction was relief. And now it seems like the real work might actually get done. Those are my sentiments.
Well, and before we, and I definitely want to get into the plea, but before we do that, let me ask you this. So, for the regular person who has no exposure to the criminal justice system, who hasn't sat in courtrooms the way you have or I have, we watch Brian Koberger sit in a court, right? And we watch the judge ask Brian Koberger a series of questions that he responded to. And we also saw that Brian Koberger filled out a piece of paper that basically, said, I am pleading guilty of my own free will, and I'm satisfied with my counsel. So talk to me a little bit about how now, he's going to say, I want to withdraw all of this. And let's kind of go through that in terms of the plea. And, because to me, Brian Koberger does not seem like a dumb guy, right? Like, we're seeing his filings, we're seeing what he's written. And I'm kind of wondering how we reconcile this idea that he is an intelligent person. He was college educated. He was a teacher. He was a teacher's assistant. He was in taking classes. And now, now we're hearing that he has written things to the court that are intelligent. So talk to me about how we reconcile this idea that he got up before a court, said all these things, and now he's saying, wait, this wasn't right. Like, why did he wait until now to bring those things up rather than say, I'm not going to plead guilty in the first place?
Now, this is going to be pretty good, what you hear here. There's a delay between my stream and the YouTube. I thought it was quite an interesting interview. I think that there's probably a lot of areas that she didn't really dive into. And this goes back to what I said in the very beginning. Everything that was presented was exculpatory to Brian. Now, people will argue that knife sheet's not exculpatory, but as we get into this interview, you're going to find out that knife sheet is not relevant. And it's not relevant because the state of Idaho itself destroyed it. Any relevance it may or may not have had was destroyed by the actions of the state of Idaho. So if that's been destroyed, and there's clearly evidence to show that that's not even a worthy piece of evidence, then what other evidence is there laid at the feet of the accused? And it's a story. It's a story that people that live by an ideology where your ideology becomes you and you are your ideology. It's people that trap themselves in those bubbles that are unable to question any of the information. The story is all they need. And facts really be damned. And so I'm going to continue with this. But if that's the way you view the world, or if that's how you live your life, you also need to get out of this stream.
I'll just say is this: anybody who's questioning this process has obviously never been a criminal defendant charged with murder, and certainly not charged with capital murder. So second guessing this is kind of, it's one of those things that I find really unpalatable, because I've done this. I've worked probably 25, 30 death penalty cases in my career and testified to many of them. And what attorneys tell clients to do is shut up, don't make a face, don't respond, don't react, and above all, don't talk. Look straight ahead or take notes. That's the instruction given to every client, every defense client ever. All right. Whether or not they take that advice is something else. So from the perspective of Ann Taylor, from her legal team, he's a good client, doing what he's told, trying to maintain that stoicism, which cannot be judged. Because as you can see from this case, as I said at the outset of this interview, the response of the public has really been our worst selves. We've been our worst selves in responding to this, smacking our chops over the deaths of these young girls, making light, making jokes, making fake AI videos to purport the side or the other. It's been very grotesque. It's been a menagerie of the grotesque, in my opinion. He has been a good client. He has been doing what he's told. He has not been talking, as he's been told. He's been letting Ann Taylor and her legal team talk for him. And as you and I both know, up until the weekend before the plea, it was all, I'm innocent. I want to take this to trial. I want to take this to court. Now, the question is, why would he then get up there? Well, first of all, he didn't allocute. That's the first thing. The second thing, and it's clear from his filing, is he was told two things. One, you need to confess or to get a plea to take the death penalty off the table. That's what he was told by his attorneys. Bad advice across the board, but that was the advice he was given. Then the second thing that he was told, according to his filing, was that it's okay to lie about whether or not you did it, because that will set legal things in motion. And then we will start to do appeals and we'll start to do other things around that. But this will give us time. This is a time-saving device.
Excuse me, sir. How old were you when you made your first million?
Heavily implied in his filing. So why would he do it? One, because he was told to. And then two, he was told it would not be of legal significance. Now, whether or not you and I would have believed that, if I had been in the room in that conversation, I would have said, what the f are you talking about? You don't tell people to support perjury. Knock that shit off right now. That's what I would have done. But I wasn't in the room. I have no, I happen to know now who was in the room, and I know exactly what was said. And it comports with the meeting that Ann Taylor had with us, which caused me to get up and walk out, which is that she basically said, I couldn't get him to take the plea initially. I couldn't get him to do it. So what did I do? I went and I enlisted his family. I told him he had to do it. I gave him a horror show of what death row was going to be like. I told him what it was going to be like if he was, just in there as a regular inmate, not on death row. And it took more than a day and a half, maybe 2 days, to get the family to convince him to take the plea. So why did he do it? I mean, in my head, I've seen this kind of scenario play out.
No, I'm interrupting because I want to talk about this. This happens a lot in criminal cases. I know because I was on the criminal end of life for quite some time in my younger years. And that is exactly what I mean. And I've said many times that it's presented to you that this is the lesser of two evils, that you can't win. And this is to take this deal, you're better off because it's a sure thing. You know what the outcome is going to be. And that happens often, so often, especially with innocent. Listen, it's not just public defenders. That's the problem. This happens across the board with lawyering. This is probably one of society's biggest sins when it comes to holding each other accountable to the letter of the law. And the people that are in charge of that process are the biggest impediment to that. They found ways to shortcut the system. They found ways to make things easy. And taking someone's freedom, even for a day, should never be an easy task. There's a process. There's everything that needs to be done, has to be done, and documented, and your I's dotted, your T's crossed. Don't type like me. I type like I got no fingers. Everything needs to be done professionally, and it needs to be done properly. And I don't care if this is a speeding ticket or if it's a criminal act, whether it be theft or assault or rape or murder or whatever it is. This process should be adhered to consistently over and over again. So the fact that now he's telling you, and he's going to support what he's stating here. He's telling you that Brian was coerced by his own defense team. And I'm telling you, I promise you, the defense team doesn't even think that what they did was wrong. Because that's how they're trained to handle cases. And that's the tragedy. That's the big sin in our justice system. I know it happens often, but because something happens often doesn't make it right. And an example of that is speeding. It happens often, but it doesn't make it right. The sign said 35, and you're going 50. There should be a consequence for that. Fair enough. I mean, that's it. There's rules for societal conduct. And your attorneys, right? Well, plead guilty to not stopping at the sign. No plea bargain. If you were speeding, you should go to court. If you could defend the fact that you weren't speeding and show the evidence, then you should walk. But if you can't, then you need to pay the fine and whatever comes along with it. And we as people need to start accepting that. But for some reason, we're in this la-la land where we can skate down a different path rather than be held accountable to our actions. We want a lesser account, a lesser fine, And that's just wonderful, right? But in the end, look how unwonderful it is when you end up in a case like this, because that's propagated from traffic court all the way to the death penalty. It happens everywhere, both ends and everywhere in between. And that's the abject worst thing in our justice system is that process. And cases, there should be cases where an evaluative panel comes in, or something, rather than just a judge, a prosecutor, and a defense attorney, to see if this person, I don't even know. Maybe they should just eliminate all plea deals, right? Maybe they should just eliminate all plea deals. That may be the only fair answer to it all. So I'll go back to play a little more of this.
Out before, but only with extremely unethical attorneys who don't want to go to trial for whatever reason.
I'm wondering why you wouldn't want to go to trial. Like, this was not a financial situation, right? The Kobergers were not paying for his legal defense. The taxpayers of the state of Idaho were paying, so their bills were being paid. They work for a public defender's office, which obviously they are paid. So, and this is not a case where, I don't know, I think the majority of the public were expecting anybody to win. So I guess my question is, what do you really have to lose? And yeah, okay, the death penalty is one area of conversation, right? We can talk about the death penalty, but I know, and hopefully Brian Koberger understood that just because the state asks for the death penalty doesn't mean if you lose at trial, they're going to impose it on you, right? That is something that a jury decides after the fact, and you can present mitigating evidence and things of that nature, and your mother can get up and talk about how awful it would be to know that her son is being put to death. And so there are ways to fight against the death penalty. So that was not a foregone conclusion if he were to go to trial and lose. So I guess I'm wondering, like, what do you think? I've always said as a lawyer, I will try anything, right? I am not in the business of trying to convince clients to take pleas. I, of course, have conversations with clients when offers are made to them, because that is our ethical obligation to do so. We must convey any offers made to clients. But in 26 years of doing this, I have never twisted anybody's arm. And I say to them, you live with the consequence of your decision. You want me to go in there and fight for you? I'll fight for you. So what do you think, what do you think they had to lose here by going to trial? I mean, they fought pretty hard throughout the pendency of the case. They obviously hired experts to try to put them in a position that was better at trial. So I'm just wondering, like, what do you think it was ultimately that she just didn't want to fight? Because frankly, the fight that was going on, as long as it was a fight. The trial aspect of it isn't really that difficult once you're prepared. So I'm just wondering what you think happened here.
I have some speculations, but first let me just say, Donna, I wish you had been there. I wish you had been in the room. I wish you had given that advice. That was not, he was not getting that advice. That's the first thing. So one, he had no advocates for him in that room. He had only people that wanted him to plea out because they didn't want to go to trial. Two, he didn't have all the information about all the exculpatory evidence that we had found. He didn't know that. He didn't know what the defense team had uncovered. And it's not me by myself. None of this stuff, according to his filing and according to other things that I'm aware of, he wasn't provided any of the defense reports. He didn't even know I existed until I went on a podcast.
Imagine that. Imagine that. I don't think public defenders suck. I think public defenders are performing a task, and their tasks are surrounded by sucks. Okay? And because it's surrounded by sucks, the ultimate result of their work sucks. Right? I mean, just think about what Turvey just said. Brian Koberger. I'm going to tell you something right now. We know more about this case than Brian Koberger.
This is a reminder. Scratch my balls every day at noon.
Can anybody hear my Alexa? Listen. There it goes.
This is a reminder. Scratch my balls every day at noon.
That Alexa, I guess, the most worthless computer accessory I've ever had. And every day at noon, I make it tell me to scratch my balls. That's the only thing it can do that I can count on. Did you guys hear that? Oh my God. Although I do get it to remind me about the KFC bucket on Tuesday and about my local sub shop deal on Thursday. Oh, so listen, I'm telling you, we know more about this case, intricately more about this case than Brian does. By far. By far. See, Sarge, I am a kind of fucked up guy, but I'm not a stupid guy. In as much as I might be ignorant on things, but if you could show me where I'm ignorant, I will then correct that problem. Right? I think we're all capable of that. I don't think all of us want to accept that or all of us agree with that statement, but I'm telling you, if you meet the minimum IQ requirements to what the world says is normal, I don't give a fuck what the topic is. It could be anything, science, biology. And you have the capacity to remove your ignorance and understand if you simply apply yourself. So in this case, what Turvey's telling us is just mind-boggling to me. That Koberger wasn't shown. I'm going to play more of this. What he says is just enough to make you think to yourself, what the hell was Ann Taylor doing? It almost draws the picture that there was a pre-gone conclusion and that the actors that were placed in front of us had that conclusion before Brian Koberger was ever brought to his first appearance in court. They played the game. She filed motions that, in my opinion, made little sense. Call my client a psychopath. What do I care? But you better be able to support my client as a psychopath without talking about this crime. And I'll explain to you why I would fight that if I was in any position to fight for him. Because he's had no criminal history whatsoever. He's an outstanding student. He loves his family. Look at all these pictures. This guy is all family. And many of you that can't understand a person that's all family would be joining me and not understanding that, because I didn't have family like that. I wouldn't send 3,500 selfies to my family of things I was doing. I mean, I come from a broken home. But I can tell you what, if I came from a home where people cared about me, people loved me, people accepted me for whatever I ended up being, whatever awkwardness I displayed, whatever shortcomings I may have had as a human being, if my family supported me and all of those things and acted like none of that stuff mattered but loved me for who I was, then call me Brian fucking Koberger. You wouldn't be insulting me at all, man. This guy wasn't, whether he did it or not is not my point here. Who did it isn't my point. But the totality of the data that we've been given exceeds the totality of data that the defendant himself was given. We can see that data does not beyond a reasonable doubt show his guilt. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean he's not guilty. But I mean, everything that they use to make the guy look like a scumbag, I don't know, maybe you got to come from a broken background like mine to realize that, in a sense, I can honestly say that the interactions that he had with his family, including his sisters, I have a little bit of envy for. And I bet you there's millions of people in America that would say the same thing if they just step back and looked at it for what it is. Just step back and look at it for what it is. So he took his sister's cell phone and sold them for drugs. Oh, I see. But the family held him to account. His own family held him to account. He was involved with drugs and he was overweight. Obviously, the family support got him through all of that. Obviously, he, like me, and like many of us that are on the spectrum, don't feel a part of. Okay? We don't feel a part of general society. We don't respond to the cues that you respond to. We don't act with the emotions that other people respond to or react with. We're different. And it's blatantly obvious. And it's very difficult for us to feel a part of. Here's a guy that had a family that made him a part and a central casting of his own family. And yet here he is on the stand. Whether he did it or not, to me, isn't relevant. The point I'm trying to make is that nobody really puts this guy in a context other than he's the killer. Or that he was framed, which in fact he may have been. But my point is, whether he's the killer or not, right? Whether he's the killer or not, what about that part of his life? Where was Ann advocating for that part of his life? Right? I really came hard on Ann. Once she moved the proceeding to a different court and we got the fucking Hitler's cousin named Hitler, because it's not their job. They don't want because you want to remain silent, and he'll explain that to you. The perfect client and the perfect associates of they keep their mouth shut. They're not trying to be a distraction or that's just what you do when you're charged with a crime. You don't say anything to anybody. That's why, in a sense, the perfect crime is done alone. If Brian Koberger did this, he did the perfect crime, right? Did it alone. But I'll go back to play this. I think take the backdrop of the murders out and look at that individual. And that's what really, we don't get any talk of that as streamers. We don't even discuss. How many of you sent 3,500 plus photos of selfies to your family? Interacted with them the way he did, knowing he's got some issues of being on the spectrum. I mean, what better family could a person on the spectrum have, right? Than a supportive family, and that we can at least point to that. Whether he committed these crimes or not doesn't mean he's incapable of committing murder, but it does say a lot for who he is and where he came from, and it says an awful lot about those that loved him.
So that's its own little separate little problem.
And we know that because he told somebody that, or how do we know that? Because if that's the case, that's
I'll disclose
horrific.
something that I have not disclosed yet, which I think is important to know. And that is that after I did Queens of Custody and your podcast, the family reached out to me like, who the hell are you? And what are you doing on this case? And why haven't we heard of all this stuff before? And then I immediately like, okay, well, let's talk. And then I handed them off to people who had legal minds, which I do not. So I was like, sure. I feel your pain. I understand what you're saying. The next step has to be legal steps that I can't be involved in. So you need to go do that. There are things that have to happen that I can't be a part of. And that's what happened. So I got told by the family directly that they had not received that stuff.
I mean, that's
the next thing
that's troubling. That's troubling.
Very troubling. It gets worse. It's way worse than you can possibly imagine. Way worse than I even worried about. I always game out the worst case scenarios and then I sort of prepare for them, hope for the best, plan for the worst kind of deal. And it's way worse. The family has not spoken yet because they're frightened out of their minds about what's going to happen the next time they speak. The vultures will descend, the legal consequences. They've been told to be quiet for this whole time, and they've also done the same thing. Notice Brian Koberger did not allocute because he couldn't, because he didn't know what happened. His family has not spoken out other than the sister giving one interview. And even that, after that, she's now a little gun shy, but they're trying to talk, but they really don't have the facility to do that. They don't trust anybody and they shouldn't. But Koberger himself in his filing makes this very real and says, I didn't know any of this stuff. I wasn't being told anything. I wasn't being given good advice. And I was told the opposite of some of the things that are occurring right now. And he is, as any good client does, has held his water this entire time because the person who speaks for him is Ann Taylor. And in lockup, he had no ability. Well, in lockup, he was even more limited by what he could say and who he could say it to. Now, I will give you one other piece of information that I learned from the Koberger family. She hasn't spoken to him since the plea. So she's in court representing him without even talking to him.
You're invited to join Phoenix Energy's next webinar, where you can drill deeper into our bond offerings. We currently offer 2
Wow.
Can you imagine?
Sorry about that mute. Sorry about that. Yep. I'm back. So listen, I don't want to address that. I want to say, Tom, it's not required, but that doesn't make it right. It's not required, but it does not make it right. The elocution in this particular case would be the most important part of a plea deal to give these families peace, to give the community peace, to give society peace that they've got the right guy, regardless of none of their evidence was actually beyond a reasonable doubt. You get a prosecutor that goes to a change of plea deal and admits they got no evidence on this guy. What caused it? I wouldn't have pled guilty. I'd have changed my plea right in front of the judge. Well, you heard what Turvey said. He couldn't allocute because he didn't know what happened. Now, that's the closest Turvey has come to saying that he's not guilty. It's not just Idaho, Becky. It's everywhere this is happening. Everywhere this is happening. You know, again, I want to just have this caveat. We're taking Turvey as Turvey's word, but that's not written in stone like the 10 Commandments purportedly were, okay? So let's just take what he's saying off of his narrow involvement in the case. And if he's now saying to us that his parents are claiming, and we don't know that that claim is true. I don't, you know, you can argue, well, why would they lie? People lie for a lot of damn reasons, okay? So he'll go on to dispute the arguments that Cy Ray was making without mentioning Cy Ray. I mean, this is quite a decent interview. There's some issues I wish, or some topics I wish they would have covered, but I think we could be pretty happy with this interview because this interview isn't about who did it. Okay? This interview is about what happened and how the state of Idaho responded to this case and what they did with a suspect who's now sitting in jail, admittedly in a plea deal, accepting that he committed these murders and telling us that, right? So that's the backdrop. You can't, you know, and someone asked me earlier in the stream, I want to cover this. What do I think of Chris Whitcomb? Listen, I think Chris Whitcomb has had one hell of a life. Yeah, this is new. It is new, Liv. I have a lot of respect for a guy that did all the things he did. Whether what he did had any faulting or wrongs in it, I'm not going to stand in judgment of a guy that did the things and was in the places that he was in. Right, wrong, or indifferent, like with anything. Brett Payne, like I said a lot of times, a case gets tunnel vision, and then your directions come from those above, from the prosecutor's office. Whether you want to point to intentional corruption by some of the officers, I think you can also point to the fact that these officers are told to do it, look at this, go for that, do this, do that, and that's orders. They just have to do them. This was just done. It was just released today, just so you know. So I hope I don't get any strikes or get banned for this. I think this woman, what is her name here? Donna Rotuno. Well, you know, I'm Italian, Donna, too. My last name is Italian, as Italian could be. Bruno is my name. So, yeah, don't give me a strike or whatever happens. I'm not trying to earn money. My stream is completely not for any money at all. So, no donations, no memberships, no commercials that pay me. I do this just because I enjoy doing it.
Imagine.
So
that
let me,
scenario?
no,
So the
no, I
questions you're
can't.
asking are really for Ann Coper. Why didn't you share this exculpatory material? And why aren't you talking to your client?
Yeah, I mean, that just makes no sense to me. And when I look at this, and I want to be really clear, so people that
it
are
makes sense
listening
to
or
me.
watching
In my little
understand.
brain, it makes sense to me,
Yeah.
but we can speculate
Well,
as to
sure.
why.
Sure. Well, and when I look at this, and I want people who are listening or watching to understand, there is a very big difference between the atrocities and the horrific things that happened to these 4 young college students and the court process. And so, you know, everybody out there is talking about how awful this is for the families to have to relive this, and this is coming back. And it is. It's awful. It's awful that it ever happened in the first place. But I think every person of every family member would want to make sure that whoever was put behind bars for this is actually the person who did it. And so,
Well,
I've
I will
always
say
thought,
that's generally true, but I won't just speak out on this very issue because it's one of the things that disgusts me the most. I've never seen a family try to sell their daughter's story like this before, ever. Going to Crime Con, trying to get different documentary deals. I'm disgusted by that. I wouldn't even think to do that as an expert, and I have access to everything. I'll talk to you and we'll have a professional conversation, but not for money.
sure.
And certainly I wouldn't, anybody who's out there trying to sell a story for money, that's grotesque.
And and I'm not going to judge what people do when they're put in the most horrific situations. I mean, obviously we can have personal opinions on it, but in terms of, just being, and again, you have to remember,
Yeah, I got to get used to unmuting myself. Sorry. I can't agree with Turvey more. He sums up exactly how I came to see this. The more and more I was involved with it, it's not just the media. Let me just say simply solo. It's not just the media that applies to. It applies to all the streaming we do on this case. All these potential killers, all these Aryan Nation, this one, that one, all the stories that we hear of the people that were involved and how you connect the blood across the street to this and the kids in that property and the boyfriend and this is what he's telling you is disgusting. It's not just the mainstream media. I think a lot of people are really under the delusion that being out here with me is a substitute to the media and you get better info from me than you do the media. Now, in some points that may be true, but for most cases, when you come on the internet, it's really about creating an audience and creating revenue, which I am not against. I'm not against that. I just think in certain issues, like when you're talking about these 4 horrifically murdered people, and let me also just say, I'm guilty of it too. I think I'm one of the few people that try his hardest not to be part of the theorizing, but I'm guilty of theorizing myself. Let me not pretend that I'm not part of it, because that's bullshit. I am. I try to do it to the lesser extent. I try to take what I hear in statements and testimony and documents and motions and make them try to make sense. Right? But I'm not, when I say I think more than at least 4 or more people were there, I'm not saying that to create a stir and then name people. I try to end it with just the data that's available to us. But that's still, I don't even know how accurate that is. I mean, I do my best, in other words, to present facts and look at the facts. And I want our justice system corrected. And if this kid's case can have a role in it, whether he did it or not. And that's the key. I don't know if he did it. I don't think anybody's going to know who did it. It's too far away. No sound. What do you mean no sound? I have sound, Becky. People, can you hear me? Yeah, you're screaming no sound. The video's not playing. It's just me talking. So I think for a lot of people, I get a lot of messages all the time. You're going to stream today. You're going to stream today. You're going to stream today. You're going to stream. And I don't answer them all, because no, unless something new develops, there's not much for me to stream about. Because I really, folks, I can't even tell you, I stress it enough that the data matters. It's all that matters. And we're not in a position on our phones and on our computers to solve this crime. And we shouldn't even be putting ourselves in a position to solve that crime. Unless you really have something so pertinent, so real that you can solve the crime. But in between all of that absolute and where we are as actual streamers, there's a Grand Canyon of distance between those 2 points. Let's go back to this interview.
remember that these are people that are talking to one side, right? They're talking to the prosecutors. They're looking at what the prosecutors are showing them. They're believing, what they hear. But prosecutors sit down with family members prior to pleas and talking about strength of evidence, and they do that in terms of actual facts or physical exhibits or things like that. That might be a little bit different. But I do think that from a practical standpoint, even people who it's very difficult to relive this. I would think that even at some point, your logical brain would take over and you would say, okay, if this really isn't the guy, then we want to make sure that we find the guy. But now let me ask you this question, because here's the practical side of this. This is a very difficult thing to overcome for Bryan Kohberger, right? Taking back a plea, putting yourself in a position to actually have a trial and to be able to plead not guilty. This is a legal burden that is very high. And so I'm wondering where you think this goes next for him. Do you think legally he has enough to go into the court and say, you know what, my lawyer was ineffective and didn't do a good job? And I'm, the legal standard's high. And I'm just wondering because, the courts give a lot of deference to lawyers saying that was strategic. They made a decision. They decided not to do this. Now, it's a little different when you're talking about a plea versus a trial that went bad.
You're absolutely correct. It's a very high and very difficult legal burden for anyone to overcome. And this is not a regular case. It's a case with exceptional circumstances. The first issue is he didn't allocute. That's the first thing that always sticks out to me. It really bothered me that he didn't allocute, and that
Same.
caused a lot of problems.
Same.
Because that's supposed to happen. Well, let's take a step back and ask ourselves what we don't know.
Hey, I'm Daniel, founder of Ridge, and every year we do something kind of crazy. This year, we're giving away a Lamborghini Storado, a Hennessy Velociraptor, a Ford Bronco, or $100,000 cash. And
who was the NBC Dateline leak? Wasn't me.
Correct.
It wasn't. The Ada County Sheriff's Department's investigating Ann Taylor's office. That would have been, and the special master who would do the investigation knew before the plea who it was, and they put that on file and they sealed it. Bryan Kohberger doesn't know who that leak was. It didn't help him. It hurt him badly. So he should know. If Ann Taylor knows, and she definitely knows, she would have to know because she's part of that sealed material. She would have to have reviewed it. She certainly didn't pass that along to Kohberger. So that's a problem. That's the first little hurdle there that's going to contextualize why he wasn't looped in and why he was coerced into taking this deal and why he was told to lie, why he was told to perjure himself. And again, this is something that people do all the time under the stress and duress of a defense attorney telling him, I'm not taking this to trial. For what is it, like a third, 29, 30% of all of the people who are exonerated by the Innocence Project basically confessed and took a plea deal at the urgence of their defense attorney because they were frightened they were going to lose a trial. That's a third. That's not a joke. That's something we have to think about how our legal system works. The next thing is that if this, I really appreciate that Judge Hippler appeared on paper, at least, to be taking this seriously by accepting the filing and then appointing him a new attorney. I don't know. It concerns me that it's a small town attorney that's got a 1-star rate. It concerns me a bit who the attorney is, but maybe he's better than we know. And maybe he's got death experience that we don't know about. So that's the next part. It's not just about the legal hurdles. It's about the competence and quality of your representation, right? But the other thing is that it's the next step that has to happen in the process. You've done this before.
All right, I want to pause this for a minute. Just imagine what he's sharing with us, this guy. I mean, if even 10% of what he's telling you is honest and it can be proven, then there's always been a huge problem in the view of us, the viewer, the citizen, the people looking into the case, right? And can you imagine that now we understand, according to him, that the leak to Dateline came from the defense? Did you guys catch that? The leak to Dateline came from the defense. They're the ones being investigated. That is just off the fucking unbelievable. Now, if his statement in that is accurate, oh my God, you have to give this guy a trial. You can't prejudice the public with a leak from the defense against your own client. Oh my God. Really? So if there's fact to support his statement, then this goes, and this look, there's a guy out here I kind of respect. I'm not too sure that it's mutual, but I don't really care. His name is Eddie. And Eddie has always been a big proponent of Ann Taylor. And I think I question, and I've questioned for quite some time now, Ann Taylor's role in all of this. Ann Taylor's effectiveness as a counsel to the defendant. And I think in every reasonable, any reasonable thinker listening to Turvey would have to step back now and question her actions in this case. Maybe look at it a little bit from the side or from the back. It's quite incredible that he's making these arguments. And let me just say that it's hard not to say I like the guy because he agrees with my points, right? I've made many of these points throughout this whole process. So I would be lying if I said that there isn't some admiration, or at least, you know what I mean, folks. Sometimes when you think things through and you come to an understanding of the evidence, and your interpretation is then, an expert is in line with what you're observing and you're thinking. I think that's pretty fucking awesome. I mean, we all like, I would think, right? It's more than, it's not just a matter of being right. It's a matter of like seeing what you see and trying to understand it in a reasonable way. And lo and behold, you're not alone. An expert involved in the case happens to be walking down that same line of reasoning. So yeah, that's kind of awesome. I must admit that. I'm gonna get back into the Turvey interview here. Or do any of you folks have any questions or anything you want to add? There you go. After I do this, I don't know if you're streaming, but if you want to jump up, I'll put a link out there if you're still here. Yeah, he is. I don't know why bald guys keep that little fluff of hair in the front of their head. That other than that, the guy's fine. But Sarge is fucked up like that. Someone needs to tell Turvey, get rid of that little whack of hair in the front of your head. You don't need it anymore. It ain't going nowhere. Right? Oh, sorry there, Brent. But, I think we could be on a first name basis when you're putting yourself out there publicly. But good God, bro. Come on. Let's, who wears vests? Anybody know anybody that wears a vest? Where's your cowboy hat? Wear your cowboy hat during the interview. Get rid of that little tuft of hair. What the hell is going on there? She is a very, very, I think she's very good. I think, look at it. I don't think any of the streamers that you guys visit in true crime, regardless of it being entertainment or not, I don't think that they're at heart bad people. And I don't think, and I've said this for years, I don't think a lot of people think too much into things, right? We don't think too much into things. It's the way the world is. And the catch-22 is if we start to think into a lot of things we do in today's world, we're going to find ourselves rather disgusted with some of the things that we just accept or ignore or do because everybody else is doing them. And that's the problem when you're on the spectrum, is that you see those things and you try not to do those things. That's kind of how I live. But let's get back to Mr. Turvey and his tuft of hair.
I'm certain. And I don't know whether you ever worked with Innocence Networks before, but I have through my entire career. In fact, I started
I have.
working with the Innocence Prep. My first big case high profile case was the West Memphis case. And I worked directly with the Innocence Project out of Cardozo Law in that case. And the process and the metrics and the intake ability of a Innocence Project is dependent upon all the other appeals being denied or completed, those processes completed. So in terms of it being a stepping stone towards other legal avenues, you have to knock them down one at a time, right? One thing at a time. You can't just skip to the end, right? So
Right.
I see it as a big legal hurdle. I fear that Ann Taylor is going to be in a lot more trouble than she thinks, because the communications that she had with everyone are documented. They're all documented. So all that stuff is going to come out. She no longer holds a privilege. Koberger does. And if he gets his day in court, a hearing, which I worry that he won't, then all that stuff could come in. All those communications with family members and Koberger himself, which he would want to have come out about the nature and extent of the coercion to him and his family by the attorney team. Right? We're not living in the old days where it's somebody's word. We don't take people at their word anymore because we can't. We have digital evidence we can use, text messages, video calls, video chats. The very evidence that we collected, we should have all collected in this case and disclosed initially, which took years to disclose, is the very evidence that would be presented in this court, in this type of hearing. So I'm not as pessimistic as you are, but I am realistic, which is I know what the hurdles are. And as you said, Mr. Koberger is not an idiot either. So for him to put this on the table tells me that he's ready to go. And I don't think that his legal team is prepared for what he's going to present.
Well, and I think to your point about if we just start back with the original Dateline leak, I mean, if that comes back, that came from his own lawyers, I mean, right there, you put him in a position where he was never
or one of his
defended
experts
properly.
at the direction of the attorney, right? And not just the attorney team, but also you got 3 attorneys and their assistants, and then you've also got, kind of a rogue defense expert right now going out there saying contrary things, And so we don't know. All we know is police think it came from the defense. And I know who it wasn't.
If that's the case, I mean, that is just, crazy. Now, let's talk about the evidence that they do believe, right, that they had against Koberger from this whole time. And I know we talked about it last time you were on. I know it's part of Christopher Whitcomb's Broken Plea book. But talk to me again about, they basically found Brian Koberger based on the DNA that they got from the IgG DNA testing on the knife sheath. And I know that part of the big contention here is that knife sheath, the chain of custody wasn't proper, where it was found versus where it was in photos, all of those things. So talk to us again about really, because that really was the only piece of evidence they had other than the description of a vehicle, right? They didn't really have anything else. So that's what led them to Brian Koberger. So talk to me again about that and then what the issues were with that chain of custody, because I think it's important for people to remember that while they're listening today.
All right. So 2 things. One is that we don't know. As I'm sitting here today, I cannot confirm to you by any forensic metric or by any judicial testimony or any unsworn testimony, anything like that. I cannot attest to you that I know for sure how Brian Koberger became a suspect. What I do know is at every opportunity, there was deflection, there was dissembling, and there was withholding by law enforcement about how that exactly happened. At one point, you have a probable cause statement saying it was from an informant. And then at one point, it's the IgG. And then you have the experts in DNA being fired on both sides. I mean, it's just like nobody was getting the answers that they wanted and people were getting terminated. It's one of the weirdest cases ever. This was an issue that should have been resolved with testimony under oath and documentation provided by the state. They have yet to provide that clearly, in my opinion. So I cannot tell you that.
Yeah.
And the fact that I can't tell you that should tell you that they're still, faffing about it to try to create. They're searching for a narrative still, I think.
And in terms of what you were able.
I wanted to pause that for a minute because this actually goes to the heart. Oh, you guys are still listening to it. Oh, okay. this goes to the heart of the issue when it comes to discovery in 2026, especially if you connect the dots on what he said about all the communications between Koberger and his lawyer with video, and it's recorded and blah, 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 blah. There's no sense. It makes no sense in today's modern world to do the discovery process in a way that was done in this case. You don't throw 500,000 documents in the air and tell them our evidence is in that scatter of bullshit. The delays, the non-compliance. It's beyond reasonable. It's so unreasonable how the prosecution dealt with this when it came to dealing with discovery during this hearing or this process. What's up, Big Amish Media? You the man. Let's see what I'm reading. Somebody's I personally would not want my son to play out. The trial is, and here's the best thing is the 100,000 of Brian Kilson were found on the button snap of the sheath. The rendering is ideal, robust, enabling multiple profiles by different methods. Well, that's in contrast to what the experts that have testified, that worked on the defense, that have not testified but have come forward. Rat Putin's revenge. That's contrary. And here's another point too, and I want to say this, and then we'll get back to the video. If you got a knife sheath with 2 blood drops on it, okay, and you swab them, and you get the red stuff on your cotton swabs, so you have 2 red stuff things, 2 blood swabs, and then you swab another part of the sheath, and it comes up completely clean. Someone needs to explain to a reasonable-minded individual why the 2 blood stains that were found on the sheath weren't ran to the nth degree to discover ownership of that particular blood, because that wasn't the victim's blood. All the unknown male DNA in the crime scene, none of it's run to the nth degree, but a cotton swab that they purport came from the snap of the sheath, okay, was run to the nth degree. Here's the funny thing, is that particular cotton swab would provide no visual reference to even want to test it further. Yet that was the cotton swab they preferred over all of the other blood evidence that they found in the scene that did not belong to Koberger. That doesn't make any sense. That's about the most ignorant fucking thing I could ever imagine. I'm not going to discuss anything with you, Rapscuse, and you're going to listen to this interview like the rest of us. And if you're going to come in here and try to gain attention, as a matter of fact, hang on a second there, Mr. Rasmussen. Get out of my channel. Get the hell out of here. Your messages are now hidden. Talk to yourself, okay? I don't want to hear that nonsense. You don't give me 3 cotton swabs. 2 got red on them and 1 are blank, and I'm going to test the blank one. I'll slap you so hard you'll wake up in the 23rd century. That's insane. It's insane. Yeah, I got rid of him. Rasputin is get a clue. Well, Rasputin, get out of my stream and stay away, you arrogant fuck. Anyway, let's get back to the interview here.
To review, do you know if you were given access to all of the evidence, or were you given access to certain pieces of evidence? How do you know that what Ann Taylor allowed you to look at was actually everything she had?
I'm smiling because I really love this question from prosecutors or attorneys when I'm on the stand. So did you look at everything? And the answer to that, there's only one answer to that, is how can I possibly know the answer to that?
Well,
I couldn't know if I've seen everything.
But
I can tell you this. Ann Taylor gave experts like myself access to a OneDrive on Google Drive that was called Expert One or whatever. And anytime you wanted to access it, you had to log in, put in the password. That would send her an email, and she would send you a text message with the verification code. Okay, so pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And I have a problem with any of that. What I do know is I thought I was given, I asked for certain things. I make a list of things that I asked for. It's a pro forma list I asked for in every case. And so I do that. And then we go to Idaho to do the evidence viewing, which I do in almost every case that I can. I do an evidence viewing to see what they got, to check change of custody, to check, like I was just in a case in Washington. It was a double homicide. And I had an item, and no fault of anybody. This was just an innocent mistake. Somebody collected an item and it said stun gun on it. right? I open up the bag. It's a flashlight, not a stun gun. There's no stun gun in there. Okay. This was just a mistake. Okay. And I wouldn't, it will get mentioned, but it's not, there isn't
Sure.
a lot of other mistakes around that. Do you know what I mean? So it was an error.
Got it. Yeah, of course.
Somebody thought it was a stun gun, and that's how they labeled it. And, they got a new system. They're working on this particular location. It's all, I'm not out for blood. I just want to know what happened. In this case, I went there.
Sure.
And there were two sets of evidence. One is the evidence that the law enforcement collected. And it was the mattress from Ethan and the knife sheath that was collected. Both of them have falsified change of custody. Both of them, it's not just a knife sheath, it's a couple other things. And many of the other items have correct change of custody on them with multiple people signing them. So we know that they know how to do it correctly. And it's not improper, it's illegal. It's a falsification of evidence. It's actually tampering with evidence. That would be the charge. And also false swearing. You can't lie. It's a sworn document that you're filling out. So it's not like
Yeah, of course.
oops, I
Yeah.
slipped and fell and filled it out for everybody wrong. No, that's not what happened. How did I know whether or not I had received everything from Ann Taylor? I can tell you that I didn't, because when I got to the bed frame that Ann Taylor's team had forced the police to collect before they destroyed the house, along with many other bloody items that the police did not want to check, did not want to collect, I found the hair on it, in this item. I'm like, what is going on here? This looks like a palm print on the side, and then there's all this hair there. Whose is this? And I look at it, it's Ethan's, the bed frame. It's white with wooden slats. And I'm like, what's this? And they're like, oh, that's the hair. Don't worry about that. We'll talk to you about that later. So we go back and we talk about it later, and they disclosed to me new autopsy photos that they hadn't given to me before. And other photographs that they'd taken of that, defense photographs that they had taken of the house before it was demolished that they had not given to me. So they were playing their cards very close to the vest in terms of sharing material, even with me, which I found to be, I let them know that was not okay. You got to share with me everything, because I anticipate being on
Yeah,
stand.
absolutely.
And I'm going to get this question from a very smart prosecutor named Donna, who's going to ask me, how do you know you've seen everything? And I'm going to have to throw you under the
Right,
bus,
yeah.
and I'll do it.
That's right. That's right. Say, sorry, I don't know that answer. They filed so many pretrial motions here. There was a lot of pretrial litigation in this case. And
Yeah.
I don't remember any pretrial litigation dealing with chains of custody and whether or not certain items should be used, right? I think they did do it on the knife sheath, right? But I don't know if they did it on anything else.
They didn't know until like a month. No, it was like maybe a few weeks before the plea, because it got brought. One of the investigators brought a question to my attention, which led us down this rabbit hole. And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. Because I don't think like that. I don't think that people are lying. But I also think as a scientist, which is that if I see something wrong in one spot, I know I got to look in the other spots too. I can't.
I just wanted to pause this for a moment. I'm going to back up, or maybe I could just restate what he stated. To me, this is important. I give the benefit of the doubt. I'm not muted anymore. I give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And that's why for the longest time, I wouldn't accept that the police set him up. I don't think that there's a grand conspiracy that set Brian Koberger up, in as much as they had his name before the crime was committed, or they were, I don't believe any of that. But I do think what happens all the time in these criminal proceedings is tunnel vision. I can't say for sure that what happened here was to protect some other entity or some individuals. I think we all jump to that immediately with a conspiracy. I'm not suggesting that in fact has anything to do with this case until enough evidence shows. And that would then have to, and that must include, from my personal understanding, the perpetrators they protected. Okay? If you're protecting one of the students or some religious or some supremacy group, some hate group, or some company, or some institution, or some nefarious crimes, and the idea that you conclude that without evidence to support it is just wrong. You're taking a personal belief and you're imposing it upon what you're looking at. And when you do that, you blind yourself to information that really matters. Solving this crime or coming to a conclusion in your mind that Brian didn't do it is not helpful. Nothing Mr. Turvey is presenting to the public has anything to do with innocence or guilt. This is all political, whether you like it or not. This is about the inadequacies, about the deceptions, about the mishandling of this case. This is what this is all about. It's not about whether he really did this or not. I suspect Dr. Turvey may think that he's not the perpetrator of this crime. But I believe, as he's pointing out, what's most important is whether he did it or not. Is this process that was used to incarcerate this guy, to elicit the plea deal from him, is that correct? Is that how the system is supposed to work? Is that how you're supposed to lose your life to a jail cell from 28 years out? You could live to 100. You could be there, what is it, 68 years or 60 something years? Come on now. And that's what matters here, right? It's beyond whether he did it or not. This is exactly these people that are representing us, that are supposed to bring justice to the victims, and are supposed to keep society not only safe, but confidence in their safety. Are they doing their job for that reason? Or are they doing it for let's just take this shortcut. Let's take that shortcut. And that's what you see with all of these plea deals. And I think Turvey so far has been the most representative on that point. I think Whitcomb does his best to not get into theorizing who did it, who didn't do it, whether Brian did or didn't do it. And he always qualifies himself in saying that he pled guilty. So you have to start from that point. Now we're on the other side of that point. And we're taking this gentleman's information and applying it to what we know. So I think this guy's interview and the information he's been giving us so far in this interview is just absolutely awesome.
Just now accepted without question. So you're always supposed to be checking change of custody, and I'd love to take credit for finding everything, but I didn't. I'm the forensic scientist, though. So if an investigator brings me a piece of evidence and asks me about it, then I give my opinion, then that becomes evidence. And then it causes us to look at other things. And the change of custody were all falsified on those as well.
I mean, that would have been an amazing pretrial motion, because then you put that out there, you show the weakness, and then you put the police officers on the stand and they have to answer to this. And, I'm still trying cases. I did a jury last week and I had a police officer admit to me that, yes, evidence helps. Well, gee, go figure. Yes, it does. And so it's amazing. Yeah, it was such an amazing answer. And so, I look at this and I think to myself, these are defense dreams, right? These types of motions, to be able to put this out there and possibly not only cut through evidence, but if you cut through enough evidence that the prosecution can't use, and if a judge tosses it out, or even if the judge doesn't toss it out, you're preserving all these rights on appeal. It just is amazing to me that, given all the other work that they did, and maybe you're right, maybe this comes down to the fact that she realized she was going to have some issues with regard to these leaks, and thought, we better get out of this case as quickly as we can. And if that's the case, that is an injustice to everyone in this case, not only Brian Kohberger, but everyone.
I will submit to you that the misconduct goes further than just Ann Taylor. It goes to Becca Barlow, it goes to the other attorney, and it goes to their forensic psychologist, who was behaving in a way that is completely improper. And certainly that was my experience with her, but also was the experience of Mr. Kohberger. She was there, instead of in her role as an evaluator, she was doing all kinds of other things that she shouldn't be doing. And I've worked so many death penalty cases. The lines are so very clear about what your role is, what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do, the types of communication that you have, difference between treatment and diagnosis, which is a therapeutic position, and then assessment of mental faculty for a forensic assessment, a forensic position. These two areas are in conflict, and you can't have the same person doing both. And so in this case, it was very the lines were so blurred for everybody, myself not included, because I've done this so many times. I protect myself very carefully because I anticipate testimony and I anticipate having to answer questions under oath. And I alone can be held accountable, whereas somebody who's not going to testify or a lawyer will not be held to account the same way. So I agree with you. It's a travesty, but I think what I think people need to understand from this is that it is far worse than most people understand. The conduct that was engaged in by the defense team, the conduct that was engaged in by the person who made the leak, depending on who that is, the lack of transparency of the defense team to Mr. Koberger, and all the other allegations of being coerced. I mean, he's not going to make that allegation unless he has the evidence. And if she's communicating with him over text messages, well, guess what?
Right, exactly. And
This guy he's doing a Sophie Cunningham on Idaho. If any of you know who Sophie Cunningham is, I did put I put a link there, so a couple of you can join. I'm going to ask you to mute if the Amish or the Dago wants to jump up. You're welcome, as well as anyone else. If you're one of these idiots that want to take over the chat room with your argument, the guy's guilty, that's your prerogative. But I'm not going to engage with you. I'm just going to block you. You know, I think I've got more blocked people than I have friends, and believe me, I like it that way. Let's see here. So, I mean, he's kicking everybody in the nads. And I want to say of all the people that are interviewed, I think we love Sophie in here. I don't know who Sophie is. We love Sophie here in Indiana. I don't know who Sophie is. I have no idea. None. Bear with me. I'm going to welcome someone to the stage. His name is Dago, according to Kathy. Dago, she says. What up, Dago? Can't hear your ass. Are you muted?
No, I'm here. I had to turn on my microphone. What's up, Sarge? Sophie's the one that's been on my panel talking. She's been around for a long time.
Well, I don't know that he could actually force the elocution, but I think the elocution in this big Amish was important for the public and for the victims' families, that they had the right guy. And again, I'm not going to say he's not the right guy, but it doesn't matter. I've told the story many times. My fingerprint were found on the door hinges that were removed to enter an apartment and rob firearms. My fingerprints were on those hinges. And they couldn't indict me because I was the maintenance man in the hallway painting the hallway that day. My fingerprints on the hinges were about as effective as the DNA that they argued was on a knife sheath. Same thing, different name. You have to have more information than just one piece of evidence, right? And if my fingerprints are explainable by my task, my job, right? Then there you go. I didn't even have to explain. I didn't have to defend myself. That was known to the police that I was the maintenance man there during their investigation. So what do you do?
Good point. What do you think about this guy throwing his friend's quote unquote friend Bicca under the bus, who's brought him on board?
Doesn't matter. It's not about friendship. When I used to.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Employees don't understand that we're friendship and business are two different things. And if Bicca Barlow, wasn't she the one that was approached by the FBI and then vanished?
No, that was Gabrielle Vargas.
All right, so she ended up moving on, didn't she?
She was scared, in my opinion. Yeah, she moved on.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people forget that even happened. But what do you mean? She comes in court and testifies that there's ways to get the people's name the FBI used that nobody knows. But I know those ways, right? And then they go to her home and scare her away. I mean, right? And this is what he's describing. And I think it's important with Turvey. I think the most important things that he's pointing out is the lack of data that was shared with Brian. And now I'm thinking to myself, whether people like it or not, I'm thinking Ann Taylor's argument about his limited, his overwhelming disabilities that limit him is her crutch. That's going to be her crutch. Watch. Right?
Good point.
Was she doing it to protect Koberger from a jury, or was she doing it to protect herself? right? I think,
That's a good question.
I'm gonna if you can mute yourself, we'll go back because there's not
Yes, sir.
there
Yes,
isn't
sir.
too much left here. A few more, 10 more minutes maybe.
The real travesty, beyond, obviously locking up somebody if you don't have the proof, but the real travesty too is if let's say that the judge says, you know what, Mr. Koberger, we're going to let you withdraw your plea. We're going to start this over from the beginning. I mean, the expense alone to the taxpayer to have to do this again would be horrible. I mean, lawyers take oaths, and if you can't trust that your own lawyer is going to do what's best for you, or at least put you in a position where you make the decision, right? Here's all the evidence. Here's Dr. Turvey's report. Here's everybody else's findings. Here's what we've discovered. And at the end of the day, they're offering to take the death penalty off the table. Do you want it or not based on the evidence? That's one thing, right? And there's a lot of people who I think should go to trial that sometimes don't because they don't want to take the risk. And that's a decision that clients make. But that is completely different than being put in a position where you're not told about pieces of evidence, or you're not told about strength of evidence, or you're not told about the way experts view evidence. That's a completely separate conversation.
Yes. So to your first point, let's talk about the money, because that's been covered a lot. And I think it's important for people to understand that the death penalty is expensive. It's one of the reasons why many states stopped doing it, because when you are working a case and you're working now, let me give you full disclosure. My contract was for about 25 grand. That's about $10,000 more than I normally make on a given case. All right. And that's disclosing a lot because most experts don't like to talk about money. If I worked only for the prosecution, I'd be able to charge between $150,000 and $200,000 per case. I don't do that. I work for either side. The money is not what's important to me. Most of the money is not going to have a lot of money will be spent by the defense, but most of the money will be spent by the state. All right. To try to make their case. I have not seen cases spend this much money in a long time, and this much money for so little result. The money shouldn't even be the conversation. The conversation should be, how did we spend this much money and we still don't have answers from the prosecution, or we have overstated, overcompetent evidence? And I can tell you it's because they basically, handed the investigation and the forensics over to the FBI and let them do it. And just kind of like, well, we don't really know anything about that. We'll let you do it. And the FBI were overconfident and wrote reports that said one thing and then had to testify in a way that reduced their confidence about the car, about the DNA, about how people were found, about the cell tower stuff. I mean, it's all just too disgusting. Again, it's disgusting for me to spend this amount of money and not have straight answers from anybody on the state side. Everybody having to reduce themselves. They took this very 100% posture of guilt, and then you get them under oath, and all of a sudden it's 70%, maybe 80%. I don't know. So there is the money issue. Yeah, but the money issue, when you are morally certain that the death penalty is the right thing for your state, it's going to cost you, because we do not put people to death in this country when we think that they might be innocent. Right? That's a rule. Sure. I mean, we don't kill innocent people, right? We can agree with that, I hope. We don't want to kill innocent people. So in the search for truth, resources will be expended, not just money, but time and effort and emotions and all that good stuff. So that's the first thing. What I would expect is if Hippler says, I'm going to grant it for you, let's start over. Great. Let's get a real death qualified attorney that actually has experience working in death penalty trials. Not somebody who's a dealer who knows how to make a plea and has maybe worked a couple cases. I mean, somebody who actually knows what they're doing. Because this is a case where now everybody's sort of on the line. The second thing is, if anybody on the side of the state or the defense has engaged in misconduct, they have opened themselves up to litigation and lawsuits. I worked on a case in Connecticut. Versus Birch and Henning, the Birch and Henning case. These were it was a home invasion where the only evidence.
I paused that for a quick moment because I want to ask you a question, Dago.
Yes, sir.
Will I get a copyright strike by playing this?
No, I've run things with Crime and Justice before. You shouldn't.
Okay. I mean, stopping and talking, though, that help prevent that?
It does help, yeah. Yeah, but I've run her before for years. I think you were actually on a panel with me one time. I ran something of theirs, and I've never had any problems with it. So I think
Well,
they'll be all right.
I let her commercials play through too because I don't
I
don't
can.
mute them. I let it just go, natural, whatever it is. Okay, that's kind of what I want. And if I do, I do. I mean, it's no up or down for me.
I get it. Yeah, no problem.
What the hell? All right, I'll get back to it.
Yes, sir.
In the case was DNA from blood alleged to have been found on a towel. That was the only evidence, all right, in the whole case. And I did the examination of that evidence in the case, and I found that the expert in that case had falsified that item. And that case went all the way to the Supreme Court of Connecticut. That expert was Henry Lee, my mentor. Now, what happened?
Wow.
He got sued personally, and he got sued to the tune of $30 million, and he lost. He refused to show up to defend himself. He knew what he had done. He had dry labbed this result for the police. There was a bunch of other cases that were going on at the same time where the same allegations were being made. But this was back in 2011. So when experts lie, there should be consequences. And in many states, there are.
Sure,
When
just like
lawyers
police
lie
or
for
anybody. Yes,
support perjury,
absolutely.
there should be consequences. And that's
I paused here so that people can see that this is the difference between professionalism and friends. Regardless of how he got to that case, the man he's talking about was his mentor, the guy that taught him his job.
Exactly.
Right.
And sorry, him saying that, I think that justifies a lot of what he's saying. I mean, that proves that he knows that same thing. There would be consequences for him if he wasn't being honest right now. You know what I mean?
Well, even more importantly, I think it not only proves that, but it also shows that you have a job to do and you do it. And friends and names and people be damned. That's not part of your part of your analysis, right? And I wish people would apply that when they start looking at this crime rather than analyzing and theorizing who did it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's in the same line of that. It's what we have here is a case that was mismanaged, completely mismanaged for reasons unknown to us at this point. We can speculate all we want. We don't know if he was framed. We can argue that he was framed. We can suggest he was tunnel vision. They made him see there's a million reasons why this guy went the way it went. Bill Thompson, the cracker clause, maybe he's a druggie. I don't know. He looked like Santa Claus that did too many drugs, in my opinion. But there's so many issues and so many ways and explanations you could fill the blanks in with, but the blanks will eventually fill themselves in.
Right.
If we do the next right thing. That's how life works. You do the next right thing, and the expected results or the hope for results generally appear, right? More often than not. And I really respect a guy like this. When I got off drugs, I had a counselor like this.
Right.
Right. And it's not about how I felt being told what I was, right? And that was what I needed to hear. That was the way it needed to be laid out. And people, unfortunately, don't want their feelings offended. They don't want their beliefs contested. And you get into these, you get like that idiot that was in the room a little while ago. There are 100,000 cells I'm sure you could see that with the naked eye. I don't care if there was 500,000 cells on that cotton swab. You wouldn't see it with the naked eye, but you ignore the blood ones. Right. I mean, right? Make the argument as much as you want in numbers. 100,000 skin cells, folks. You lose 5,000 skin cells a minute or a second. It is. You lose 5 billion in a 24-hour period of time.
Right.
So what is 100,000 divided by 5 billion? And how many locations could you transfer them 5 billion skin cells to? You look like Pigpen under a microscope when you walk around. We all do.
Yeah.
I mean, right? We're leaving clouds of DNA behind us.
Yes.
Right. So what is 100,000 skin cells? Nothing. Nothing in the idea that you lose 5 billion a day.
It's a pile of dust around you is all it is.
You wouldn't even see it. 70% of the dust in your home is your own dead skin.
Exactly.
Right. So idiots like that want to keep arguing innocence or guilt. I'm sorry. I just don't see it that way.
Nothing better to do.
Let's see here. Get back. How do I turn her back? There it is. All right. We'll be back in a minute.
That's a separate conversation. What I'm concerned about is people have already kind of decided, well, he's guilty, so he's done. He already said he was guilty. Again, 1/3 of defendants who are investigated by the Innocence Project are found to have been wrongfully convicted. 1/3 of them were coerced by their defense attorneys. This is a common
Dad, the stairs aren't the same for me anymore. The stairs used to be nothing. Now I stand at the bottom and
concept. I am so grateful to you as an attorney, as a criminal justice professional, that you and I can meet, regardless of the side that we take, on this very even plane of, hey, we don't do that. We let the client decide. Right. You give them my job is to educate attorneys educate the client, and my job then becomes maybe educate the court, maybe educate the jury, but ultimately there's a trier of fact that's going to come in and make a decision. And we want them to have the best and fullest and most complete set of information that exists. You and I can agree on that without getting mad at each other. That's not the world we live in
Absolutely.
Right now. Nobody wants anybody to have a fair shake. Nobody wants anybody to the truth to come out. People decide who the monsters are, and then they go down that road instead of doing the investigation.
It's interesting you say that, because just this last week I did a jury, and it was an attempted murder case, and the client had another lawyer for the first 7 years that his case was pending. And we came in, and I think in about 8 months decided to take the case to trial. And this guy was trying to push this guy to take a deal every which way from Sunday. And we came in and I talked to him about that deal, and I talked to him about why it was less of a risk, because it was much less time than he would serve if he lost. But at the end of the day, he has a right to have his day in court. And we tried that case, and that jury came back in about 4.5 hours with a not guilty. So, you have to be able to, and for clients that say, I did not do this, I am actually innocent, and I want to have my day in court, then they're willing to take a risk.
That's exactly right. If you have somebody who's guilty and they get a good plea deal, they're going to take it, right? And that's the problem.
Yeah.
That sets up a stereotype. And if you apply that stereotype or that caricature of a defendant to Brian Kohberger, you're going to miss all the important information and facts and details underneath the surface that are going on that he has not been talking about. Like I said, he's been a good client as far as I can tell, by virtue of doing what he was told, as well as his family, and keeping their mouths shut.
Talk to me a little bit about the hair that was found in Ethan Chapin's hand. I know we talked about this originally. This is something that's gotten a lot of communication online and otherwise, and that the hair did not match Brian Kohberger's, but there's some inconclusive facts out there. And again, because the prosecutors really didn't answer, and because Kohberger didn't really allocute, there's still a lot of questions surrounding that hair. The police are saying it was tested, it wasn't Kohberger's, that it was Chapin's himself. Now, is that true, or do we have no idea who that hair belongs to?
Nobody who's under oath is saying that, and no report says that it belongs to Ethan. That is where our world exists. So anybody who's saying these is guessing. They're saying maybe it's him, maybe it's not. Just like Ann Taylor and her team said, they asked me, what if it belongs to somebody in the house? I'm like, well, maybe it does. We need to find out who that is and how it got in his hand, right? Because that would wreck the timeline. Well, let's talk about what does exist, okay? The hair, my first encounter was the hair on the bed frame. And it was like probably 20, 30 strands, about that long, coming off the bed frame, attached in blood on the bed frame with Ethan's
That's a lot.
Imprint of Ethan's
20,
hand.
30 strands. That's a lot. Yeah.
It's way more than that. Okay. So, but that's what I could see. I can show you the pictures right now if you want to, but the pictures of the hair on the bed frame and that are also attached to the wall is even more. There's even a bigger clump from what's on the bed frame attached to the wall. When they pulled it away, there's a nice little streak of blood. When they pulled it away, there's hair attached to the wall and sealed to the wall with blood. And it's even more than that amount of hair. Then we have the hair that's in his hand, the phone was taken at the crime scene. Okay, so there's 3 different photos. So anybody who has not looked at all the evidence and who is speaking on issues that they don't know anything about because they're not a reconstructionist or not a forensic scientist, anybody who's saying that those hairs doesn't exist, it means that they haven't looked at the evidence and aren't aware of what's going on in the case. They viewed the case through their very narrow aperture. I did crime scene analysis and reconstruction, which means my hands were in everything. All right, so those photographs exist. And not only that, they were leaked online. There are people that have put these photographs online and put them into nice collages for everybody to see. So the first hurdle to clear is, do they exist? Yes. Then when the police wrote a report about it, it was described in the autopsy report and the police reports as debris in his hands. There was no debris in his hands. It was just human hair, all right? A clump of it in his hands, then some stuck to the bed frame and then some stuck to the wall. That hair was of such significance that they sent it off to the FBI lab, who looked at it under a microscope and said, these hairs do not share similar characteristics. Therefore, there's no DNA testing needed to be done. And Brian Koberger is excluded. These are the facts. These are not Brent Turvey's speculations. This is what exists on the record. Now, have you heard anything about that? Other than through me? No. No one wants to talk about it. Why? Because it would upend the case. It would upend everything. It would change everything we think about the timeline, the narrative, the interaction, who was in what room. But there's other evidence. There's down in the first floor bedroom, we have the jacket that didn't get collected or tested properly. We have a bloody bracelet that was on the floor that got picked up and moved by police and put on one of the desks and ignored and not collected. We have many different items of evidence like that weren't exactly examined or considered in the timeline because they got lost or forgotten or just plain ignored because they didn't fit the narrative. I come back to the same thing every time. When you want to know what happened, you examine the evidence. When you want to know what the truth is, you pursue that evidence to find out whose it is, how it got there, conditions of transfer, and what that means for the entirety of the reconstruction of the case. And there's not a real interest in doing that. In fact, they were so disinterested in doing that they demolished the house. I never even heard of that before, where you demolished the house.
I know, me neither.
And then they created this 3D model of it that I went out again to examine and took my photographs and did a 3D scan of it. It doesn't even match the interior of the house. It's full of incorrect access, incorrect sizes. It's a big sign under, not to scale. They wanted to use it as a trial exhibit. Didn't have anything in it. Didn't have anything to do with the case. Just an approximation of maybe what the house might have looked like inside. We're not sure.
I'm going to say that I feel like no matter which way you fall on this, right? Whether you think Brian Koberger did it, whether you think he didn't do it, no matter what you think, I think everyone that's paid attention to this case has always wanted to see a trial here, because a trial was either going to expose that there was or there wasn't enough evidence, and a trial could potentially answer the question, why or how. And so no matter how you feel about this, no one got those answers. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Judge Hippler does and see if we ever get those answers. But no matter what happens, I'm sure, Dr. Turvey, I will want to talk to you about it. So I hope you'll be back with me, and I thank you so much. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Crime and Justice. Remember, we want to hear from you. Send us your thoughts, questions, or theories, and we will answer them on air.
More boxes, more options. Grainger has over 1,700 box types in stock.
Wow. That was quite an interview, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I fully. I've been kind of on the fence with Turvey for only because I don't know what to take from it. But after this, I don't think I am. I think I believe in this guy. I do. I think I respect him, in my opinion. Because again, he has too much to lose if he comes forth and says all of what he's saying right now. Being the expert and the professional that he is, if it were to be proven that he was all full of shit, he could lose it all, Sarge. I mean, that's not good.
Well, yeah, I don't know that I'm going to give him any more validation than the statements that he makes, and I don't think it's
what I mean.
They're not based on an opinion, but the opinion too is like with anyone else's. He's seen things that we haven't seen, but he doesn't ever. That's the other thing I like about it. He doesn't tell you about stuff he's seen that you can't see.
Exactly.
I saw the pictures of the hair in Ethan's hand. I saw the pictures of the bed and the wall. That stuff was online. I mean, it was clear for us to see it wasn't a single strand of hair, as Mr. Cy Ray was telling people.
No, and I think he's downplaying that on purpose, Sarge, because if you remember, I think it was somebody within law enforcement on one of the body cams claimed it looked like he had a squirrel in his hand. Well, okay, one strand of hair is not going to make it look like you got a squirrel in your hand. I'm sorry. No. It has to be a good bunch of hair, I would imagine. So
well, I have an unrelated question. How do I get a link for my Discord so people can meet me in Discord? How do I do that?
You have to pull. I
want to get people my Discord info, right?
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Lucy or Tomboy or somebody, one of your mods, they should be able to go into the Discord and grab the link for it and post it in the chat for you.
I don't
If
know.
they have access to it, I should say.
Well, okay. So if someone knows how I'm able to do it, I have Discord. I don't know how to link people to my Discord. So
Do you
I don't
have
know.
an actual Discord, or are you just in Discord?
No, I have a server.
Okay.
Let me see. Where's my there it is. Hang on.
There should be an arrow.
In
SRB
general,
should be.
I could put add, right?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
But-
SRB is telling you at the header. Click the arrow. I'm not the greatest with.
All right. Well,
Discord,
Big
so-
Amish, try this to see what that does for you. See if that helps get you to me in Discord. What we've assumed for a long time, because we've been given information for 4 years almost, right?
Yeah.
And we've always been able to look at what we see and just say it's just not enough. There's just information doesn't add up.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's actually the first expert, and I think Whitcomb and him give us their best assessment of what they've been exposed to. Right? And I think that's the only thing that I think Whitcomb says that he's seen that we haven't seen. They wouldn't let him put it in his book. And Whitcomb is very, very anal about telling you got to read the book. Now, you can argue that he's just doing that to make money, whatever the reason is, but he won't talk outside of the book.
Right.
So that it worked for me. So let me see here. I'm looking in Discord.
And he's claiming now because Brian filed PCR that he doesn't want to talk outside of the book at all. I wonder if he was made to sign some kind of an NDA or something at this point. I don't know. I doubt that, but I don't know.
I just added Big Amish, just so you know. Suzanne B. Oh, I don't want to add myself. Alicia.
I'll join you in there too. I didn't know you had one.
Yeah, I've tried to. We've talked on Discord. What do you mean you don't know I have? I send you a message. You never reply.
We can go back and forth to each other on Discord, but I didn't know you had like a community in Discord. Is what
I got a general room. I don't even know what it's called. Bruno Pelicano. That's my name.
Yeah. That's what I didn't know.
That's what I mean. Who is Sergeant Friday?
Good question.
Friday from that show Dragnet. No, I'm not a policeman. Never was, nor in the military.
Just the facts, ma'am.
Yeah. But I that interview was very, very much what this guy needs to be put on the stand for Brian if he gets a hearing.
Oh, I think he will be. And I'll be honest with you. I've been saying this recently, Sarge, because of Brian's PCR, the way he's worded things. I am wondering if Turvey reached out to Brian. I wonder that now and said, hey, this is what you're.
Well, no. He said his family, Brian's family, reached out to him. That's how he knows what he knows.
Okay, so I didn't hear that part. I must have.
Oh yeah, he said that they reached out to him, like, who are you and what are you doing talking about this? Because they saw his interview.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense.
And that's what he's saying. That he mentioned that a day and a half to convince him to take the plea. They used the family as leverage.
Yeah.
And imagine now the most important thing he's saying is that things in this case Brian never even knew existed. This kid sat in jail thinking they had his DNA on a knife sheath in his car and a photograph, right?
Yep. Basically
reduce it to that. And they're saying he committed murder and he can't defend himself because he's thinking to himself, but that wasn't me. How could this be? Right?
Exactly.
And even if they're lying. But see, there was no info, according to him, given to him that showed that, in fact, they may be lying. That this whole story is just a story.
So we have two sides to this now. People are looking at this like that. One, the whole defense is crooked as all hell, and that's what happened here. Or this is some big grand plan that the defense has, along with everybody involved, to give Brian the best possible choice that he has. Well, I don't know that I can grab a hold of that, Sarge. I don't think that this is a big grand plan at this point. I think that there was some nefarious shit going on, and it was just not done. I think that Brian didn't get, honest to God, from what I'm seeing, I feel like Brian just did not get the best choices, and the best answers and the best defense, I guess I should say, that he should have had. I'm starting to really think that. And It took me a long time to get to this point where it's starting to feel that way because I didn't want to throw Taylor under the bus, but look at it. You know what I mean?
The entire case in the beginning never had probable cause.
Right.
It never had it. There was nothing to show that Brian Koberger was in the vicinity of that. Pictures of a similar vehicle is not evidence of your presence. It just isn't. And
Right.
then it gets worse. They can prove you weren't there based on what they've used to show your locations. In other words, they can show you were at Walmart, you were at the coffee shop, you were picking your nose over at the Sunoco gas station. They can show Brian. In other words, they exhibit the capacity to locate the guy clearly, except on the night of the crime. And what they offer, they use all these other ideas to show just how good we are at showing you where this guy's location is at different times, except during the crime. And so that to me is exculpatory. On one hand, you're showing us you got these skills and you can locate them every other day except for the day that matters.
Right.
So why are you charging this guy?
Good point. Good point.
Now, I did send friend requests to everybody that communicated with me on Discord at this point. Zach, I'll send you one. So you guys have to accept that. Beach Babe, I think I sent you one. Anybody that sent me a message on Discord, you have a reciprocal friends request. There you go. But I think this was probably the best interview, and it was done in a very professional way.
Yeah.
Opinions were not discussed. Right? And I think that's a big tell-all.
Yeah, no, they weren't opinions at all. These were factual statements being put out. And like I said, I think it says a lot. The Vicka Barlow, and the reason why I asked you what I did earlier is because I think it's important. Vicka Barlow, it was claimed that he and her were friends, blah, 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 whatever. And like you said, it doesn't matter. That's the point I'm making. She's the one that brought him on board. Well, if he's seeing even his quote unquote friend doing some things that they shouldn't be doing to go along with, well, that I think that shows integrity with him because he's pointing at the truth no matter what. You know what I'm saying?
I think he exhibited enough of his own personal experiences in life to us have a confidence that the words he's communicating to us are as factual that in his mind, right? Yeah. He's not expounding upon this, and he's not trying to pat himself on the back, and he's not. No. I mean, he makes points just when he talks about himself. He just makes these points so that you get an understanding that this is his profession, and then he carries himself as a highly rated professional, and his statements of fact. Yes, he knows them to be right.
One of the biggest things too, Sarge, is what does Dr. Brent Turvey have to gain from doing this? Nothing.
No, he has everything to gain. Right?
I don't think he has anything other than negative attention.
No, he has everything to gain in the world of truth and honesty.
I mean, in that way, yeah, but you know what I mean.
I don't think any negative comments on the internet are just ridiculous. That's why my name is out there, right? It's on my Discord. I don't really give a fuck.
Of course.
I mean, right? And I think more of us should be who we are rather than hide behind these, whatever these names are people use. Just be you. But people are afraid, whatever.
Yep.
But in his capacity as a professional that specializes in crime scene evaluation, right, evidence and stuff, he's telling us it's not just a knife sheath that has a chain of custody issue. That's just one item. There's many items where the signatures were later applied. Okay, either by the officer themselves or on behalf of the officer, and that's the same as criminal. And I agree with him.
There was a number of things in aspect like that happened that they left. One little thing that has bothered me that I just realized the other day, I was watching a body cam. They left one detective behind to collect all the evidence by himself and to bring it all back. And you know who that was? Brett Payne. Brett Payne is the one that renumbered all the samples and everything by himself. All of these things that were happening, they're little things, but I think they point to something is all I'm saying. Like, I don't trust it. I just don't trust it. So it goes right along with what you were saying.
I want to say this too. I think in response to what Twiz is saying, and I don't know, this is my thought through understanding of what I witnessed with the rest of you as we watch this case proceed. is that Judge Hippler had a very shallow understanding of the case.
Yeah.
He didn't have any of the deep dive.
Right.
And I think in response to that, that's also the response of the defense, the lack thereof their work. And I think a lot of motions that she filed, although pertinent to the case, weren't the motions that would have got this case ended. If none of the evidence is presented in court because the evidence is defective in its custody, then you have no case against the accused, whether he's guilty or innocent. That's just how it works. That's why they have a chain of custody. And I don't think that she effectively really ran down that road to show that he's innocent, and the evidence that they're presenting is it's faulty. It's defective. There's one person with 6 names on a piece of paper written by one person. That is a crime. That evidence cannot be trusted now. Even if his fingerprints were all over the weapon and there was blood on that weapon from him, the way they handled it makes it inadmissible. And I don't think she pursued those in a way that would have been beneficial to her client.
She was given options to get help that I've questioned from the point that it happened that she turned down. She never went to I can't think of what they're called, but there's a judge that you can go to get the things you need for this. I know there's a name for you guys, and I'm sorry I don't remember, but she never did that. She never proceeded with any of that stuff. And I just don't understand why you wouldn't do that if you're doing your job to the full extent of what you're supposed to be doing as a defense attorney. Why you wouldn't not go for every option that's out there for you, everything available to you, and she didn't do that. That's something I've always questioned.
Yeah, I'm perplexed at especially, we're Monday morning quarterback and everything. And unfortunately, we're in this position, and so is Koberger, because of the prosecution's behavior and the defense's lack of an aggressive attack against what the prosecution was doing. I mean, there's so many faults at what the prosecution did.
Yes.
I mean, how could you approach the FBI approach a DNA expert that testified on the stand, exposing the DNA? What she did, we know what she did.
Of course,
she showed the back door that they're not supposed to use.
Yes, she showed the back door, 100%.
And the thing is, Americans need to know that. And if Americans had any fucking sense, they'd understand what these data centers are for.
Absolutely.
So let's not get into that conversation.
No, that's a whole different show.
Right? I mean, it's just insanity what we're allowing these corporations to do to us. And what do the government does? What does the government do? They go around the back and they hire a corporation who has no fucking responsibility to keep track of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, all these
Absolutely.
things people see flying around, you bet your ass those are things we made. You could count on that. There ain't nobody from another planet flying over Minneapolis. I promise you that. It's something that we created, right? Through some corporation.
Right.
Right. So that's how they backdoor us, because the corporations aren't limited by the Constitution. They're not. We
agree.
We're not limited by the Constitution. The government is, right?
Yes.
And that's how they backdoor all this shit. And what they did to this kid, whether he committed the crime or not, just it's so un-American. It's so un-American. It's the best.
It is. And Big Amish makes a good point. He said the amplification of the DNA skin cells through AI algorithm is not only a second search, but a manipulation of evidence.
Yes.
Then sent back to the FBI, which is a third search with WI and manipulated untrustworthy DNA. 100%. It is not real, in my opinion.
What you
created it.
You can get a partial print, but then you would have to prove that partial print is my complete print, right? To the exclusion of all others. And I'm not sure you could do that with a partial print. Maybe you can, but I don't know I've ever heard of that. A partial print is a suspect, maybe, but it's not evidence that print was. In other words, you only got a part of it.
Well, now Gonsalves is coming out now in a new interview he did, Sarge, and saying that they had multiple versions of this thumbprint on this snap. Well, it's not on the snap, it's on the strap. We know that. So again, misinformation being released. Either that or he's being told stuff that's absolute bullshit. They were going to present, he said at the trial, multiple versions of this thumbprint, past and present, things that could have happened 24, 48, 72 hours beforehand. showing that there's multiple versions of this thumbprint that was on this snap. I don't believe this. I think he's being told a bunch of bullshit that could keep him facing forward and not turning on them is what I think is happening with this.
We went for 3 years with it being on the button, on the inside of
yes.
the button snap. Remember
Yes.
when I was on your show and I produced a document
Yes.
that showed 3 locations on that knife sheath where they got data from?
Yes.
It was inside the knife sheath, which drove us nuts.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
It was on the knife sheath and on the button snap. That was stated in a document released by the MPD. Right? And I remember I'm not going to get into what happened as a making that argument, but now we know that is absolutely fact.
They told us for 3 years solid that it was inside there. Okay. Inside that snap.
No, you're wrong, High Heels and Henry. They said inside the button snap in a document released by the state itself.
Yes.
And I highlighted it and presented it on a show. And the document's somewhere on my computer. And I made a point of making that show that they had 3 locations they found DNA on that knife.
And then they came back 3 years later and told us it was on the strap.
Right. They never said strap. They said inside the button snap. It was very specific. And the inside is when I came out with the argument that if it's made of brass, there is no DNA that could survive on brass.
Yes, and that's when
that's when that Rumpelstiltskin or that guy there, what was his name, got all mad because your show and we put that out before he did. He got all mad.
Oh, get a clue. Right.
Get it.
Yeah, he had a flip over that one.
Oh, the G's. I'm sorry there, High Heels. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she's right.
Now they're converting it to strap. And the reason they're converting it to strap is because that would be a place you couldn't argue its existence could be sustained during the time it took to test it. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Like the refrigerator went bad. That wouldn't disqualify DNA. Here's another thing that drives me crazy. And I don't mean any disrespect to Whitcomb or Cy or even Turvey. But don't you dare tell me that diluted blood was diluted by someone's saliva. Because if that's true, let's go ahead. That's true. That blood was diluted by Zaina's saliva. Well, then you know what that means? You have 2 DNA samples.
Yes, sir.
Right? I mean, you got to be out of your goddamn mind to make it. Listen, for an investigator, a specialist, an expert, that woman, to suggest that blood was diluted by her saliva. Okay? That's what you went over to give a DNA test, is saliva. They didn't puncture Kohlberger's arm and draw blood. So anybody for an expert to come forward and say, well, they were naked or that blood was diluted by saliva is just an asshole. They shouldn't they're experts in ignorance is what they are.
Right. If it was diluted by saliva, we would have a cross DNA mixture sample is what it would be.
DNA sample. You wouldn't have a diluted blood with an unknown substance. And then for your expert to come forward and suggest it was saliva from the mouth injuries to Zaina, that person needs to be picked up from somebody needs to get up from the back row and take the long walk to smack that person on the back of their head. What kind of an expert are you?
Yes. And they've been trying to grow this DNA now recently too, saying that it wasn't just a trace amount of it. It was a large amount. They had this is all bullshit, Sarge. They've been changing this story as we go, as they want to, and it's bullshit. It was nothing but trace DNA. We know this for how long. Now, it was so much more than just trace. It wasn't trace DNA. It was a large amount of DNA. It was so much of DNA. What the fuck are you talking about? Come on.
Listen, and here's the thing, too, and this is what Othram originally, I don't know how people, maybe I just have a trap for a memory. Look, the claim to fame for Othram was that they had a proprietary software, and this was argued by Ann Taylor. How many people, don't you remember? They had a proprietary software that allowed them to identify DNA samples all the way down to 9 skin cells.
Yes.
No one in the world can do that except Othram. And a lot of people, for whatever reason, now they're coming in with this 100,000 skin cells. I'll slap you so hard you'll look like your pet cat. Okay? Are you kidding me? That was an argument made early on in this case.
Yeah.
I don't care if they skipped or they ran or they walked. Look, I don't care if you're in a wheelchair. Yeah. Okay. Come from the back row and crack that expert in the head and tell him, look, Go home. Don't play around here. Just go home, right? Get him out of the courtroom because that's the last place that human being should be,
Agreed.
especially on a case where 4 people were slaughtered like that.
Yes,
That's
sir.
the best expert you can come up with. Oh,
Very
yeah.
good point, sir.
I get a little bit crazy, I guess.
No, it's important, and the passion is real, sir. It has been from the beginning of it. It needs to be.
I don't know what people accept. I was a business name for a long time, and I don't understand. I mean,
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't.
Oh, I'll tell you, before I go, I'm going to write memoirs about all the clients that called back that wanted me to go take care of their problem on a roof that they hired someone else to hired rather than me. I know I should have went with you. I went with someone else. No. Hey, hold on a minute. What? You picked the wrong contractor to live with it, and I just hang up the phone on him. I'm not here to fix your problem. You know, you gave that guy 15, 20 grand. You want me to come over there for hundreds of dollars. You want me to eat the crumbs off the ground because you made a bad choice. No. I got other work to do. Have a good day.
Absolutely.
And that's how that expert should be treated. Saliva. I'm telling you, that blood was diluted before it hit the wall. That blood did not get diluted after it hit the wall. Whitcomb makes that argument without saying what I'm saying, but that's exactly what he's telling you. That the dilution of the blood with unknown substance wasn't diluted after it hit the wall. It was diluted before it ever got to the wall.
Right.
To the
Right.
molding, right?
Yes.
And I think, and I can't say it enough, Miss Potts is the one that argued the dog shook. And that would explain all the weird places where that blood landed.
Yeah, it definitely could. That would be an interesting point for sure. If the dog was washed and then shook off like they always do, it was all over the place in different patterns. Yeah.
See, no, look at here, twist. See, that's not doing business. Charge full price and redo the whole roof. That's not honest. That's not fair. It just isn't right. Just because they got taken advantage of the last guy doesn't mean I can go in there now and take advantage of them. They got a leak. They don't need a whole roof. I'm not going to lie to people. In other words, I'm not going to be part of your problem. I'm not going to make your life worse, or I'm not going to profit from it. That's just not, to me, that's just not fair.
Right.
I just don't want anything to do with you. You made your choice. Live with it. What am I going to say?
I hate to do this, Sarge, but I have to jump out because I have to get ready for my show. But thank you for having me, sir. Yeah, I'm glad you were live.
Yeah, I did it unannounced. I just boom.
We need to see more of these. I miss coming over here with you.
Yeah, you're welcome to come in. Anybody in the chat room is welcome to come in too.
Great show, and thanks for putting this out because it's definitely important to be seen.
Yeah, you should cover. I think other shows are going to cover it as well.
Oh, I'm sure. I probably will myself down in a while. So
there's a link. I don't know why Big Amish don't come in here.
All right, sir. Well, thanks again for having me. I will see you soon, and keep up the great work, sir. Appreciate you. All right.
Yeah. So there, Dago and Sarge. At the time of the PCA, there was male B and D blood. Not Brian K. Yet he was the only one charged. True. They never identified the potential suspect. They didn't. They just identified it as like you're saying, male blood, unidentified male. They left it there. And that's just an investigative process that wasn't an investigation. Once they got Kohlberger, and here's the thing too, and this is another reason why, people that argue they did this on purpose to Brian do have a leg to stand on, because let's be clear, all that other DNA was collected long before Brian Kohlberger's name, according to them, before Brian Kohlberger's name was part of this investigation, which actually contradicts that. Their behavior with this evidence suggests that they had Brian Kohlberger's name long before any of the testing was done. It even suggests that his name was in their possession long before any of the DNA testing was done. I think Whitcomb, I don't know why people have taken a burn or a dislike to the guy. That guy's done an awful lot for our country. And whether you agree with what he did or not, he put himself out there. He put his life on the line. He did a lot of things globally, whether you agree with them or not. The man lived a life, I think, that's to be respected. Not agreed with, but at least respected that he did what he did throughout his life. And the fact that he wrote a book and he's a book writer, that really, if you listen to his story, That's what he set out to be from college, was a writer. And so now he's involved here. And you know, I don't hold anything against the guy. His opinions, I think, or not even his opinions, the information he gave us, if you remember, even Brian Kohlberger mentions it in his request for an appeal. The information he shared was information Brian was never aware of. And now you're hearing it. You're hearing it from Turvey. And Turvey's saying the knife sheath and the chain of custody and the hairs, just some of the stuff. Right? And that to me is the crux of this issue. And that's why I keep saying this is political. Bill Thompson is in a political position. The sheriffs and the people that are elected there, and the people they hire and the people they give commands to, they're moving up the chain, leads to political fucking nonsense. And I think Whitcomb, I respect the guy. I don't agree with some of his missed opportunities to point at things that were like he sticks on the table and he sticks on another vehicle. Okay. But there was a lot of things in that house that he discussed or he put forward that I think warranted more attention. He tries to get us to pay more attention to things that he didn't really write about. And I think I think that's pretty good that he's doing that. And in this particular interview with Turvey, this guy lights everybody up, not because he's looking to be like, in my opinion, like Cy Ray. To me, Cy Ray is looking for some like pat on the back. You know what's funny is when I go from my StreamYard over into my YouTube, good, it moves way different in YouTube than it does in StreamYard. And that may be because when I move, that's why. Because when I move from between the two, it goes from live to not being live. The judge denied Kohlberger's request to unseal the Dateline leak. Well, if that Dateline leak came from, there's a link in the room that just passed over there. If that Dateline link, if that shit comes from the defense, you better watch out. You better not cry. Okay, you better not pout. Because some handcuffs are going to be telling you why. That ain't right. Yeah, there are some things that people may disagree with, but you have to also realize, and he's pretty good at explaining how the system works, and I've been trying to explain that for a long time. Brett Payne may have no culpability, no knowledge, or nothing to do with anything as far as setting up Kohlberger. I mean, he's telling you he didn't hear the kid's name until the 19th or something. And so whatever workings were happening behind the scenes, and Chris Whitcomb is very, very good at what he shared with us. And I used to do this in politics, and people would get mad. Because if you don't know how the system works, you shouldn't have an opinion about what you're looking at. Okay, I'll say that again. If you don't know how the system works, keep your opinion to yourself. Okay, in other words, shut the fuck up. When he tells you about how everything is compartmentalized and only need to know is it shared with, there may be just Bill Thompson that knows the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And he cherry-picked and directed the investigation to get an outcome that Bill Thompson wanted for Bill Thompson. Do you understand? And I think even Steve Gonzalez realizes that in some of the statements he's made. Right? So the investigator down the street or down on the crime scene has no understanding of what Bill Thompson's motives are. Right? Well, listen, that's also, just so you know, circus music, that's also the failing of our system. That's the failing of our system and the training of people that end up in positions to which they were trained to be a part of. But the system being the system, you're trained to work within that system. And that is one of the shortcomings of a system, especially when you have human beings running the system, right? There's no accuracy. You can't, unless you get people like Turvey, a room full of Turveys, then what? What happens now? I mean, look at the American people. How many times do you witness a police officer drive by you at 10 or 15 miles an hour over the speed limit? Why aren't you reporting them? Why aren't you participating in the safety of your own community? Because the guy that swore an oath to protect you is putting other lives at risk by speeding. Isn't that the argument they use when you go to traffic court? That you're putting other people's lives at risk? Isn't that the argument for speeding? Well, why aren't we applying that to the people that enforce those laws? Why are Americans allowing that to happen? Why, when you're training another cadet, are you talking on the phone to your girlfriend while the cadet's riding around with you? Why are you speeding and the cadet not speaking up and saying, excuse me, Sarge, but the speed limit's 35? Why are they not trained to zero in on right and wrong and stick to it, right? And so that's the real problem with our system is we have become complacent. We've become observers rather than participants. In this particular case, that's also the biggest threat to our society is we became observers because all of the streamers and all of the media are selling you context and they're selling you guilt or innocence. And you're not paying attention to the only part of the case that you, an American citizen, can be a part of, and that's the process. You see, we've been trained to become observers. We're triggered by outrage. That's why when you go look at here, I'm going to do it right now. Let me see what it shows me. Let's see. To give you an example. I mean, look, I'm going to stream this. And I'm not trying to be, well, yeah, I guess. I'm being a dick. Okay? Look. Look at that screen. Look at the screen. Read the screen. How possible, according to Birdie. Biden judge crushed. Right? Air Force One threat. All of this outrage. 4chan's post, the first 24 hours. I mean, you could go on and on and on. Liberal war. Everything is entertainment. And we get lost. We get so lost. And where we are as a human society of individuals in a free nation, we surrender without even realizing it. We surrender our power. We surrender our place in society. We surrender our involvement in society. We become spectators to our own world. We're not participants. We get up, we go to work, and we come home and we get entertained. And throughout the day, our phone continues to entertain us. But those same devices are the exact same tools that you need to become an active participant in your society. That's the thing that drives me the craziest of all. I can't tell you how many times I tossed and turned in bed thinking that over. How do you get people to see that? In the Kohberger case, I think this is probably the most effective thing I've ever seen where people, I believe, or I think I should rather say, that I think people are starting to get it. You can participate. You can question the experts. You can observe information for information's sake. You can separate yourself from innocence or guilt of a suspect and look at the case presented by the state, your representatives. Are they making an argument that holds water? Is their argument suspect? Does their argument look like corruption? Does their argument look like it's half-assed? Those things you can actually directly affect. But, unless you were on the ground from the moment that crime scene was discovered, I'm not so sure that anyone in our known universe can tell us who did it except the people or person that did it. I don't know that Kohberger's a strange dude. If you guys knew me personally or you seen me under those circumstances, I got to give Brian Kohberger more credit than I think most people give him. How many of you could sit in a courtroom and tolerate what he had to tolerate? Whether you did it or not. Just imagine. Right? Just imagine having to sit there for all that time, year after year, day after day, stuck in a cage. Right? And they're telling you that's your car. Whether it's your car or not. Let's just be real. Whether it's your car or not, you can't identify it in any of the images that have been presented to anybody, right? No, nobody can identify the owner of that vehicle. That's just a white four-door sedan. Ooh, you're clever. You defined it as a Hyundai. Well, you also defined it as a Nissan. You've also designed it as different years. I mean, these are just stories. They're narratives that have no basis to be supported by a single fact. Oh, look, there's a clear shot of a 15 or 16 or Elantra, but it's not in front of the house. It's not at the house. It's not on the street of the house. It's in a different road. It is. It isn't it witchy? It is. It's like, my God. And we are part of the reason why it's soul draining. We are part of the reason why it's exhausting. Me included. Right? I don't separate myself or suggest I'm better or smarter than anyone else out there. I don't think that's true. I don't think there's a person on this planet that can't be a billion times smarter than me. I don't know how he was capable of holding himself. You know, he's got to be a little deeper on the spectrum than someone like me. But then again, I was homeless at 14. So I had to face injustices, whether I created them for myself or the injustice was just part of living life. And that's, you know, I have a great passion for this country, a great passion for people I don't even know. I have a great passion for the truth, a great passion to be honest. And I'll tell you what, I'd be the worst person in that courtroom. I'd be jumping up. That ain't my fucking car. That's not where I was. And my lawyer, remove him. Remove the defendant from the courtroom. Gag the defendant. That's what, if that were me, that's what you would have seen. It would have been a show that be remembered for all times. 100 years from now, they'd be saying, see that guy that was charged with those murders? You see him in court? There'd be clips. There'd be memes. I'd be the most popular face in the universe from here on out if that were me. But Brian Kohlberger, he kept it all in. He kept it to himself. He did what he was told. How many of us could have done that? How many would have been able to do that? Yeah, you know, in all fairness, he pled guilty, so you have to accept that statement. But if you go all the way back to the beginning, and everybody arguing his innocence or guilt this whole time, the guy was innocent the moment he was arrested, because you're innocent till proven guilty here, and that's the key concept that's been lost on all of these ideas of who did it. Who did it when it was done doesn't have anything to do with Brian Kohlberger's innocence. He's innocent till proven guilty. That was then not proven. I'm telling you, I wish I knew somebody that was good with video and making memes. That Bill Thompson, well, you don't know that he didn't do it, Tamara. There's just no way to determine that to be a fact, right? No, I think you guys you're doing exactly what I'm trying to point out to you. That really gets things confusing for you. Brian Kohlberger is the accused, and that's all we can say. Right? Is the evidence that was presented to us thus far beyond a reasonable doubt? The answer to that is no. Was the probable cause affidavit enough probable cause to arrest a guy? I would say no. I think that probable cause affidavit was information they should have kept to their chest. I think that probable cause affidavit or the probable cause level of clarity should have been brought to a grand jury. They should have seated a secret grand jury and brought their information, an explanation of what they thought it meant, or an explanation of what it really meant because they had solid evidence. Here's a picture of him in his car, right? Something of pertinent factual basis that puts him in the home. But their lack of that doesn't mean he's innocent either. And that's a hard thing to wrap your head around. That's why I'm not really into the idea that he's innocent or guilty, or that the boyfriend did it, the France did it, the Aryan Nation did it, the drug dealers did it, the sex traffickers did it, the college did it, the cops did it. I can't buy into any of that. That can't be established no more than you can establish what they tried to establish against Brian. I think the judge should have demanded Brian Kohlberger to stand up there. I think he should have demanded, where's the murder weapon? What'd you do with it? And then they should have put him in a cop car. I threw it in the Snake River. Well, drive me to where you threw it in. And send divers to go get the weapon. Right? I'm just stunned at how far down the fucking trash heap our justice system has dwindled into. Right? I got a friend the other day that was all mad, just besides himself that there were nasty comments on Hunter Biden's interview about his dad being sick with cancer. And people coming in and saying, oh, I wish he died, blah, 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 right? A lot of negative comments against Biden. And I said to him, I don't agree with doing that. I don't agree with that. I don't like the guy. I don't like what he did, blah. I give you a lip, but that same guy, when I said, well, I agree with you, nobody should be making comments like that about an ex-president. But what about the one that was just shot at 3 different times? Well, he's a dictator. He should be shot. See, I can't live and think with people like that. I just can't. I don't care how much you hate the current president or the past president. I don't think wishing death or harm upon them is a good idea. But worse, I don't think attempting to kill either one of them is acceptable at all for any reason for any person to do it. But for a person to like one or the other, okay, and be okay with a man being shot at and actually hit in the ear with one shot. On his golf course, he was shot at. There was a sniper's nest in a tree where his airplane is down in Florida. All of that stuff, that's okay. You take the term hateful idiot to a new level, and I just can't see things that way. Right? It's fine to disagree. Totally fine to disagree. But I don't think disagreement means somebody should be killed. I just think that's taking it too far. And this case is an example of how our society has dwindled to that. It's dwindled to where, and let me just say, it hasn't really dwindled. It's been like that for the entire time the country's been here. A lot of Americans won't look at it that way or refuse to understand. The KKK, the assassination of Kennedy, the assassination of Lincoln, and all comes from one side of the aisle. All of it comes from one side of the aisle. It isn't both sides. It's one. They believe that violence is the answer. And that's just wrong. That's hate. And I can't deal with people that hate. You're right. An IgG alone is not supposed to be arrested. That's why in their documents they put when they were applying for a warrant that if they can approve the warrant without the use of the IgG, they would prefer it because they feel the IgG could be questioned down the road in the court. Remember that warrant? I think a woman wrote it. I don't know if it was I don't think it was in the PCA. I think it was in a follow-up warrant after he was arrested. But like my title says, Brent Turvey takes down Idaho. And he takes down Idaho because he was equal-handed in his objective opinions of both sides of this case, both the prosecution and the defense. And I think that that's admirable when both sides, he's not arguing for his innocence. He's not arguing for his guilt. He's not acting like he's the only one that knows these things and nobody else could know them unless they were him. It's just crazy, man. It's crazy. That's why I take issue with Cy Ray. He's the smartest guy in the room. And you look at he's definitely an intelligent guy. Right? But the only guy that can interpret that cast data, he's out there telling the parents that guy was in that house 5 times. I wouldn't want to know that. 5 times. How could he be in the house 5 times and no one noticed him? Only Cy Ray. How'd Cy Ray do it? With some magical fucking radio wave. Right? Unbelievable. Yeah, and I think Turvey needs a wardrobe consultant. Not that I'd be the wardrobe consultant. Let me be very clear. I dress very much like I did when I was in high school. And I'm an older guy. But I still have the same haircut and I wear the same duds, man. So I'm not the fashion consultant, but the vest and that little tuft of hair needs to be corrected. Quickly, Turvey, quickly. Cy did say something to the effect that the guy could be shown in the living room within 75 feet of the house on 5 different occasions. Acting like he's the only one that can read those documents to know what he knows. He's beyond arrogant. And I think both Whitcomb and Turvey present themselves in a way that's, I think, much more professional with the title expert than Cy Ray did. I think Cy Ray takes it to a level of ridiculousness. Yeah, I don't wear sandals and socks. fucking weather up here. Here comes the rain, but oh well. At least I get the pool refilled for free. Maybe overfilled. Oh well. So what else? Anybody? I'm going to put a link in here. If anybody wants to put their 2 cents in, come on up. You can even spend a nickel while you're here. I don't mind. And was that yeah, the 80s big hair rules. What was I going to say? What hairstyles? Yeah. Ray, PSY Ray. Yeah, there you go, Tamara. No, I think he's might have some knowledge that's accurate, but it's not pertinent to this case because it's not evidence that can ever be used at this point. Just imagine that all the chain of custody stuff that Mr. Turvey is not naming but pointing out in his way. So there, let's see, the Dago. What did he do? There he is. He's there. Where's my show? There it is. Yeah, for those of you that join me on Discord, be aware I'm as accurately or repetitively on there as I am on Discord or on this. No, and if what Turvey is telling us about chain of custody on different pieces of evidence, I mean, for all we know, Brian Koberger's phone has been to Alaska and back because one of the investigators forgot to put it back in the pouch and didn't sign it. I mean, it could be everything and anything, right? I've often wondered, maybe some of you remember this, maybe some of you don't, but why did they cut sections of drywall out but none of the floor? That's always had a curiosity to me. You mean you cut drywall out, but you didn't take out any of the flooring between the second and third floors? How about any of the flooring on the staircases? Why didn't you tear that up? You found blood on the staircase wall, but you didn't tear the stairs up. You didn't cover them with a chemical to look. You didn't hit it with an ultraviolet light to look for blood stains. I mean, what kind of a jackass investigation was this? What kind of uneducated, unprepared, unknowing people invaded that house? They did more to disrupt and destroy this crime scene than the murderer did, sadly. Whoever that person may be or persons. Which, if you remember, the identity of the white sedan, Mysteries Minds with Mama Bear. Boo, yeah. There she is, folks. Find her online. I don't have her link, but you could post your link there. Mystery Minds with Mama Bear. I just listened the other day. I colored my hair with my Just for Men and shaved my beard. And to no avail. That's the best part. To no avail. Even the girl I've been hanging out with didn't say a word. So at the end of the night, I said, don't you notice anything different? She goes, yeah, you used that $5 hair color and shave. What was I supposed to say? I thought that was the best reply ever. Use that $5 hair color and shave. Like, you bitch. Get out of my house. I was leaving anyway, she says. I've had enough of you. That's just fucking epic. You see, so just so you know, I get it in return and I think it's funny. So when I say things about Turvey's appearance, believe me, I don't have any objection to people making comments on my appearance at all. I think it's fucking funny. Oh my God. My hair has always been baby fine, baby hair thin. It's crazy. It's thick. I mean, there's a lot of it. Don't get me wrong. You can't see through it, but the individual strands are just crazy thin, man. And when they get gray, they get all, gray hairs. I think it's more brittle and it's just harder to do anything with. All right. What do you guys think? Did you like the interview with Turvey, number 1? Or did you dislike the interview with Turvey, number 2? Let's have a quick poll. 1, you liked the Turvey interview. 2, you didn't like it. Devil's advocate. I always get notifications from that. Yeah, and I would like to thank. Let me see here. I'm on YouTube. Yeah, you guys cranked that right up. 100 and something likes. That's pretty awesome, man. 1.5. Get out of here, 1.5 twizzle stick. What's wrong with you? 1.5 my ass. That's a 1 all day long for me. I'm going to put a 1 in there. I'm going to put a 1 in there twice. I think he carried himself well. I think he explained himself well without relying on info that nobody has seen. That just drives me nuts. If you've seen what I've seen, yeah, okay. I don't like when people do that. Don't tell me about shit that we can't then evaluate your opinion by. Your opinion's your opinion, okay? But don't try to make your opinion stronger because you've seen things we haven't seen. Fuck you. The minute people start talking like that, I want to slap them. Unreal. New subscriber. Well, welcome there, Tamara Lockhart. You've subscribed to a channel that doesn't generate, nor will it ever generate, revenue from its listeners or from any advertisements that may or may not appear. Because, I don't need the money and I don't want the money. And I refreshed the YouTube because look at that, 167 likes. You people are kicking ass out there. I appreciate the likes because I think it was a fairly good stream. I think it was very informative and, it is what it is. I'll tell you what I got for lunch today. Don't you all go and get jealous. Nobody get jealous now. But I got that extra crispy Kentucky Fried Chicken. I've decided I can live my life on that. I'm not going to, but yeah. And I'm a steak and potatoes guy, but good with that extra crispy Kentucky Fried Chicken. That will be my, it's only 2:00. Man, I could live on that. Whew. I don't know. That guy ought to be reincarnated and see if he's got any other great ideas because that extra crispy chicken was like a badass idea. That survived the test of time for real. The pepperoni rolls, they were good too. I baked a cake the other night and got compliments on it from the people I shared it with, which was rather nice. So moist. Fantastic. Big chocolate double fudge cake with chocolate frosting. I did not this time. I should have, but I did not cut it in half and fill it with pudding, which is normally what I do when I make a cake. I did not do that this time. So KFC reminds me of home. Man, it's just the best chicken. Now, I know a lot of people like that other chicken place. I've never been there, though. Chick-fil-A. I've never been to a Chick-fil-A. I'll tell you one of the reasons I don't know why you go to a restaurant and everybody's got to stick pickles on everything. It's almost like there's a pickle mafia in this country. Why are pickles put on everything? It's crazy, man. I don't want a chicken or a fish sub or a fish. I don't want pickles on everything, man. Pickles are great with hamburgers and hot dogs. That's it for me. But there's got to be a pickle mafia out there. It's crazy. All their commercials, there's pickle, there's some kind of funky song. Just give me the piece of chicken and leave me alone. Right? You could do that at KFC. You don't have to get any fancy shit. Can I have a bucket of extra crispy chicken, please? And they like, bam, serve it right up. You're like, thank you. How about some potato wedges on the side? Yeah, I thought that interview was good. I my respect for Turvey has gone up. Although in the general appearance category, he's got some rough edges. Some of you women, some of you ladies out here should approach him. That's a good idea. Put caramel or fudge on it. I like doing it with pudding, but in all fairness, I used a cup of milk in the cake rather than water. And so I didn't have enough milk to make the pudding. So I settled with just frosting the cake. Next up is going to be an apple pie, but I'm going to wait a little while before I make my apple pie. I need to get me some whipped cream and some French vanilla ice cream before I get into the apple pie. With whipped cream. I haven't had whipped cream in a long time. Bundt cake with a pudding center. There you go. So here we are. And I think I'm out of saying what I can say. Took less than a year for me to grow out the gray and get a medium. Look at that. Yvonne. So for those of you that join me on Discord, I appreciate it. I will be checking in and out of there. Don't be shy to send me a message or alert me if something comes up that's important. This I just happen to be surfing the internet. I woke up around, I don't even know, 10:30. And then I got online and I saw that interview. I watched it live. And I was just like, awesome. Somebody, where is the Discord link? I don't know how to link you there now. Now you're asking me. Anybody got that link to my Discord? Please put it in the room, especially if you're a mod. What do we got in here for mods? What do we got any mods? Let's see. Hang on a second. I can add a few mods today for those of you, whether you like it or not. My God, this mouse is, are you kidding me? I added, let me see here. Who have I seen in there? I think, Yvonne, you should be turned into a mod. Kiss Me Where I Pee. That's kind of a fucked up name. What the hell's wrong with this world? What kind of a name is that? Oh my God. She's a basketball player and kicks ass. Thank you there, Luce. See that, Lucy's very handy. Very knowledgeable woman, very handy. I think she's got a thing for either Twiz or Kane. I think it's Kane or Twiz that Lucy might have a thing for. Just putting her stuff out there online because that's what we're supposed to do, right? Yeah, the air of the dirty laundry. What the fuck, she says? That dirty laundry. Someone just Discorded me. Let's see here. Add you. I sent you an ad request there. So who else do we got in here? All right, let's see. I'll try to add the people, especially that join me on Discord. If you join me on Discord, say something and highlight my name. I can add you as a moderator. Let's see. Lucy gets handsy too. Oh boy, Luce. Look at that. The love affair blooms in the chat room. We used to have a couple come in here. One guy, I forget his name. Carl. Whatever happened to Carl? Carl. He was queen of the, I don't even know. He was queen of something now. Let me see here. Yep, you're already added. What the hell? Kiss Me is here? Yep, she's here. Uh-oh. Now we got a love triangle. Kiss Me, Twiz, and Lucy. Jesus. Don't do an Idaho on these girls there, Twiz. Be nice, for God's sakes. Nah, no need popping. All right, there's that. Just me. Let's see here. Man, look at that. This thing is filling up over here. Old Sarge getting popular until he's not. Right? What the hell? I got an image over there. Oh, a funny looking dog. Yeah, tis a name. Tis a name. Anything else, folks? I think we're going to cut this off. It's been quite a long stream. I can say I very much appreciate the amount of viewers that we had. It was up over 370 at one point. And the amount of likes, 170, I think, or so. What the hell? I like the chat here, not a bunch of Fruit Loops. Yeah, we don't want fruit. I've never eaten Fruit Loops. It's something I've never eaten. What the hell? All right. Thank you for coming in. And we'll be back. You may see me on other channels today or tomorrow or something. Who knows? But in the meantime, stay out of trouble. But if you get in trouble, do it alone, would you? So you don't get any witnesses to turn coat on you. And try to hang out with people that don't wear vests. So, you know, that would mean Mr. Turvey. Not that he would probably be a bad guy to hang out with, but the vest just doesn't work. That's okay there, big Amish. You all stay out of trouble.